Yes.
The leaf spring army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1220 of the War News stream. And we've got big news yet again today. We've seen satellite footage showing Iran rebuilding their nuclear site already at Fordo. We've also seen Ukraine destroy Russian fighter jets today in Volgograd, and also U.S. officials consider brand new strikes on Iran. Even though we just did some strikes before, we're going to potentially do them again. So we have very big news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours, as a matter of fact, the past 48 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to hear significant developments in practically every single corner of the globe in the past 48 hours. I do have to say to many that if you were not here for last night's stream, that is perfectly all right. We did not run a stream last night due to a slower news day, but we have absolutely massive news to be covering for the 48-hour period, and especially over the course of the day, as we have been able to hear that the armed forces of Ukraine have been able to successfully, once again, push the Russian Federation back and across the Sumy border near to the Kursk frontier, as we have been able to hear the Ukrainian armed forces retook the village of Oleksandrivka today inside the Sumy Oblast, while at the same time solidifying their offensive positions in Konstantinivka and Kindrikivka, and once again putting a great deal of pressure onto the just early started Russian Sumy offensive. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that Russian strategic bombers, or more so fighter bombers, were destroyed today at the Marinovak airbase inside of Volgograd, as we were able to hear that 2 Su-34s were destroyed outright, with an additional 2 being severely damaged to the point that the airframes have most likely been knocked out of action. Not a technical destruction in the fullest sense, but still largely a destruction in the term of its usability in the war effort. We've also been able to see that the Russian Federation is rapidly trying to construct any sort of aircraft hangars and shelters to be able to protect the remainder of their air force from such crippling attacks that the Ukrainians have been conducting so far, while at the same time, the Ukrainian armed forces have been continuing their fight along the entirety of the front inside of Luhansk, Donetsk, and Zaporizhia, while we're also getting additional information of Russian forces rapidly moving into the Zaporizhia area through Mariupol at the moment in preparations for what will appear to be a significant summer offensive inside of the Zaporizhia plain. Outside of that, We also were able to hear that the Russian Federation is complaining greatly and threatening the country of Estonia today over what they are claiming is escalation, as they have stated that the Estonian state allowing the deployment of U.S. or other allied F-35 aircraft into Estonia, which are technically nuclear capable, is a significant escalation by the Estonians against the Russian Federation. They're going to have to cry about that. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear inside the Islamic Republic of Iran that the Islamic Republic is already working towards the rebuilding and restructuring of their nuclear facilities in Isfahan, as well as the Fordo enrichment plan, as we've been able to see satellite footage that is clearly showing us the developments of the key types of rebuilding efforts that would be necessary to be able to try and get these nuclear facilities back up and running. It does appear that the Islamic Republic, like many have said, and like the Islamic Republic government has said, will not be abandoning the concept or dream of nuclearization through force of arms here in the near future. We have also been able to hear that air defense fire just broke out over Tehran, although we're not exactly sure why or if the city is even under attack at all. We have also been able to hear that Mossad has stated that if you hear an IRGC commander who's receiving a phone call and you hear his telephone ring, get away from him as fast as possible, because the situation is most likely going to become explosive at the least. We have also been able to hear some additional information that the Israelis are now conducting bombing operations within southern Lebanon against Hezbollah forces, while at the exact same time, we've also been able to hear that the U.S. defense of Israel has expended nearly 15 to 20% of all THAAD missile interceptors in the entirety of the world, a significant depletion costing the United States of America $800 million US. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that the People's Republic of China has now developed a new kind of drone. We are calling it the Bee, in honor of Winnie the Pooh, the leader of the People's Republic of China, that apparently will be able to conduct reconnaissance for squad-level infantry units on the battlefield of the wars of the future. How we've also been able to see that North Korea has clearly opened a brand new uranium enrichment plant inside the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to help them to enrich uranium to a weapons grade and allow them to expand their nuclear arsenal at an even greater pace. We have also been able to hear that the United States of America is now considering the possible second bombardment of the Islamic Republic of Iran, as more information has started to come out that the Iranians are clearly working towards the development or usage of nuclear weaponry once again, and the United States of America is observing the situation and trying to weigh in whether or not there should be a second round of strikes conducted against the Iranians. Outside of that, the Turks have also stated today that the S-400 system, the most advanced Russian surface-to-air missile defense system in the entirety of the world, that is at least open and available for export, is apparently not that good. The Turks have stated today that it does not provide complete coverage, and there are actually some failing graces of the system for the greater part that appear to lead the system to be largely inadequate to the modern battlefield and requires some sort of a replacement here in the future. On top of that, one last piece of major news we have been able to hear that some great journalists in the United Kingdom were able to get into a video conference for a group inside of Britain called Palestine Action, that apparently in the course of this call, which was video recorded by the journalists, actually were planning more attacks against British air bases. As many of you all will know, that there was an attack on a British air base a little while ago where these saboteurs hopped onto a Voyager aircraft and sprayed paint and other kinds of solutions into the engines of the aircraft, pretty much rendering them inoperable until significant repairs have been effected to the engines, highly showing that the Palestine Action Group is actually in a group of saboteurs, either domestically homegrown within the UK or supported by some sort of an outside government. Nevertheless, we have a massive amount of news today. That's probably one of the longest news summaries that we have given here in a little bit, but today was a very large and significant news day, and those are just the big ticket items that we have to cover today. There's also a lot of additional things that we have to cover over the past 48 hours, but nevertheless, we are going to be getting into each and every single piece of it, as we have been able to hear that the Russian Federation took significant hits today inside of the Volgograd Oblast, as Russian bombers based at the Marinovak airfield just several miles outside of the major city of Volgograd came under attack today by Ukrainian drones and suffered significant losses. Really quickly, I'm actually going to show you all the Volgograd airspace or Volgograd airfield before we get into the details and speak a little bit about this airbase in particular, as this is actually not the first time it's been attacked, but this is the first time that we can confirm the loss of aircraft on the tarmac as a result of the attack. From what we've been able to hear, the Ukrainian drones were able to strike down onto at least 5 significant targets within the airfield at this moment. We do not have satellite photography or picture evidence to be able to speak further to the damage or clearly show the kind of damage that was caused and the lack of abilities that this airbase will now be suffering from. But we do have some incredibly interesting information about what the Ukrainians have been able to do so far. First off, we were able to hear that the attack was a success, and the Russian air base's air defense systems were not able to deal with or shoot down the incoming drones. 4 Russian aircraft were lost as a result of the attack. 2 Su-34s, which you can actually see here on the tarmac even in this satellite picture, were outright destroyed, with another 2 additionally being damaged to the point that they appear to have been knocked entirely out of action, or severely damaged to the point that they'll require significant repairs, or maybe written off at a later date. Meaning that in total, nearly 4 Su-34 fighter bombers were destroyed at the airfield over the course of this attack. Not only that, we also were able to hear that the aircraft repair paddock, seen over here, with this larger tent structure that is supposed to house and help repair these Russian fighter bombers, was also targeted and destroyed as well, along with the supporting repair facilities, pretty much the surrounding junkyard in this area. It appears to have been completely obliterated by multiple Ukrainian drones, at least according to the SBU's initial reports, most likely to be corroborated by satellite picture here within the next 48 hours, which is telling us that this strike against the airbase was incredibly successful. The Marinovak airbase actually does fall under the Southern Military District Zone of Command, based out of their headquarters in Rostov-on-Don, further on down inside of the city of Rostov-on-Don in the Rostov Oblast. These aircraft are specifically a part of the Russian military operations that are conducted in Ukraine in the skies. This is something that is undoubtedly true, as the Southern Military District has largely been charged by the orders of the President of the Russian Federation for being the main military district to carry out military operations against the state of Ukraine, and the Southern Military District also has, I guess you could say, occupational jurisdiction over the occupied regions of Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk, although the Central Military District holds any sort of occupational jurisdiction over any advances that have been currently made in the Sumy Oblast. This is making it wildly clear that the Ukrainian armed forces targeted and destroyed the aircraft and logistical facilities at this airbase to directly relieve pressure immediately off of the current strain that is being seen on the battlefield by the ongoing Russian air activities that have been continuing throughout the entirety of the war. This damage is not going to be massively noted, at least here over the next few days, as Russian air operations will most likely appear to continue forward over the next couple of days without any real impediments or impediments by this action that was conducted today. Nevertheless, we will start to see that this will accumulate, as 4 additional Su-34s knocked out of service, either destroyed or heavily damaged, will start to greatly decrease the amount of available fighter bombers that will be able to conduct air operations over Ukraine, considering that the Su-34 pretty much makes up the very backbone of the Russian Federation's air forces in Ukraine at the moment. Not only that, the loss of the airfield's logistical forces at Marinovka will also be posing greater issues or greater challenges for the Russian Air Force here in the remaining future, as if this airbase has had its logistical facilities completely knocked out, this means that if they are even able to restart any sort of repairs or any sort of routine maintenance on their aircraft, it is most likely going to be decreased in quality, meaning that a lot more aircraft are going to be put out at this airbase for repairs and be sitting on the tarmac and not conducting air operations against the state of Ukraine within the next several weeks. We do understand that a lot of these Su-34 fighter bombers at the Marinovka airfield are actually fairly active, as this is one of the major airfields that houses and operates the Su-34 fighter bomber wings that are used inside of Ukraine. And not only that, I have to point out the reason why the Su-34 is one of the most heavily used aircraft in the conflict currently by the Russian Federation is that it is one of the few true multi-role aircraft that the Russian Federation actually possesses. Unlike the Su-30, the Su-35, or any Su-27 variant or a MiG-29, this aircraft is actually able to conduct air-to-air and air-to-ground operations with a great deal of competency, at least compared to its peers inside of the Russian Air Force. For this reason, the Russian Federation has started to lean heavily onto the use of Su-34s, not only for air-to-ground operations, dropping glide bombs when those were highly available at earlier parts of the conflict, but they've also been using them for air defense as well, attempting to try and intercept any sort of incoming Ukrainian drones or the like that have entered over Russian-occupied airspace in Ukraine or Russian airspace inside of the Russian Federation's mainland. This means that these aircraft are actually high-priority targets as compared to any others, such as Su-30SMs, Su-35s, so on and so forth, like the MiG-29s, because these aircraft actually do serve a role in the multi-role, instead of being purebred air superiority aircraft or purebred attack aircraft like the Su-25. So these aircraft's losses will be significant for the Russian Air Force in the future, and it also will be very significant that the logistical base inside of Marinovka was knocked out as a result of the drone attack. We were able to get
It just seems quite remarkable that out of all the fighter jets that have been destroyed so far in recent times by Ukraine, that's a Russian aircraft. Most of them are destroyed on the ground. They're not even destroyed in the sky at this point. Most of them are just destroyed before they even take off, which is wild because it highlights the fact that Russia does not have hardened shelters, and they're trying to build them as fast as they can, but they don't have them right now. And it's so easy to go in with drones and strike them literally right on the tarmac. It's honestly embarrassing for Russia to claim to be a superpower, and they don't even simply have the proper structures to protect their own aircraft or their own air bases.
It really is absolutely an embarrassment for the Russian Federation, and it is also showing the heavy lack of funding that the Russian Federation's air forces and armed forces in general have had over the decades, even after the collapse of the Soviet Union. We could already see that Russian military bloggers were starting to point out that this was another major disaster for the Russian Federation's tactical air abilities in Ukraine, as usually the Su-34 supports tactical level operations, not strategic level operations like, say, a Tu-95, a Tu-160, or a Tu-22M3 would support. And we also saw that apparently this specific military blogger in particular was actually hoping that the Russian officers that allowed for this act of incompetence would also be held accountable along with the Ukrainians in the future, at least according to his own statements. This is coming at the exact same time as the Russian Federation is rushing, pun intended, I suppose, to be able to try and create aircraft hangars or shelters of any type, whether softened or hardened shelters, to be able to try and protect their aircraft into the future. And this actually brings us to another airbase in the region of the Southern Military District that was attacked prior and actually ended up resulting in significant losses. The Ottobansk airfield, right outside of the Kasputin Yar missile range, which is right out here, and also up here as well. Actually, as a matter of fact, the Kasputin Yar firing and testing range actually covers an insanely large area outside of the Ottobansk airbase, but nevertheless, this is the Ottobansk airbase right here. And this airbase is quite significant because if you look at the satellite pictures here, this is the only airbase in the Russian Federation that actually operates the Su-57, and I quote, stealth aircraft. The reality is that the Su-57 is not stealth. It cannot even be classified as low visibility. It has the same radar cross-section as an F-15 Eagle in the U.S. Air Force. So these things are really just more so stylized air superiority fighters is the best way to explain them. Some people will say that they look nice. Me personally, I think that there's better looking stealth aircraft out there without a doubt. Nevertheless, this airbase actually was targeted, and two Su-57s were actually knocked out of action, with one being completely destroyed at the airbase as a result of Ukrainian drone attacks a little while ago. And we were able to see on satellite pictures today that the Russians are desperately attempting to build soft aircraft shelters, as we can see here, over the tarmac of the Ottobansk airbase to be able to try and protect some of their aircraft, at least from some level of a drone attack. Drone attacks are the bane of the Russian Air Force's existence due to their lack of funding and the fact that most, if not all, of their aircraft are stored in open tarmac spaces, meaning that they're open to the visible, wide open air, or there really is nothing obstructing them from being directly hit. This makes it easy for Ukrainian drone attacks to be able to find their targets, hit them, and destroy them with relative ease because there's nothing in the way of the drone and the aircraft. It appears that the Russians are trying to go with the cheap option at the moment and just construct simplified soft hangars and shelters for these aircraft in the meantime, while they try and explore a longer-term option of creating hardened shelters to be able to put these aircraft inside of. But it is quite
Well, you got to admit, this is an upgrade from the tire protection that they had before. But oh my God, excuse me, by the way, a piece of lightning just happened right in front of my face. I was literally right outside my door right now, and that was very loud out there. Good Lord, that made my skin stand up and my hair and stuff. But anyways, away from that major distraction, almost got struck by lightning out the window there for a second. It's crazy. They've upgraded their tire protection. You know how they put like tires in the wings and stuff to protect it from these drones?
Yeah.
They've upgraded from that to this soft shelter now, which is not much of an upgrade, really. It's kind of shocking, like I mentioned before, that they really haven't thought about hardened shelters until now, until they're actually getting drone attack. It seems like there's other countries that are like considered lesser powers than Russia that have hardened protection, but yet Russia doesn't. It's really wild.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting because if you go to a place like, say, the United Kingdom, usually known, at least here in the Western world, according to the propaganda circles, for greater military incompetence, which I'd highly argue is not the case, we can see that at some RAF bases, for example, let me see if I can find one here around the Nottingham area. I believe there is one around here. Dang. Man, I don't know why, but it's so difficult to find British air bases because they generally blend into the background. I don't know why that is the case, but dang, folks, I think I'm actually going to have to go pull up. Oh, wait, hang on. Is this an active RAF airbase? Doesn't look, if it is, it's a training base because it doesn't look like they have any operational combat aircraft here. So really quickly, let me go pull up a list of British air bases. Let's see, list of British air bases. So that way I can make sure to go find y'all some. And we want to make sure to find some on the British mainland. So let me make sure. You know what? We'll go to RAF Lakenheath. That's a pretty famous one. It's out here in the area of the Norfolk coastline, or Norwich for the large part. And I believe that this is RAF Marham, actually. But still, this is going to prove the point generally. You can actually see that they have soft shelters at RAF Marham, and I also believe that they have some hardened shelters as well around the airbase on top of that, which I'm not able to see at the moment. So let me go to RAF Lakenheath, and here we go. And this is in Brandon in the United Kingdom. And here is RAF Lakenheath, which is a pretty commonly and popularly used airbase, not only by the Royal Air Force, but also by the Royal Air Force as well. And you can see right here that once again, there is still a significant number of soft shelters around the airfield. And not only that, there are also hardened shelters for ammunition storage as well. Something that you would simply never see at a Russian airfield. There is no such thing as hardened ammunition facilities at most Russian airfields. As a matter of fact, something that is a little bit special and interesting is that there is only one Russian airfield in the entirety of the western region of the Russian Federation that actually even has hardened ammunition shelters, and that would be the Ingalls Air Base. It has those hardened ammunition shelters right there. And then right next door they have all of the unhardened. Oh look, actually the satellite picture has been updated here. You can actually see the remnants of the unprotected, unhardened ammunition shelters that actually were blown up a couple of months ago.
Jeez, that's terrible. Look at that. That thing has been shredded like confetti out there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them have been. There was a building here, there was a building here, there were two buildings here, there was another one here. You can see the entire facility got blown to smithereens over here because this one main building was hit. The explosion was so strong, it ended up creating a catalyst through the rest of the unhardened shelters and ended up blowing them all sky high. So all of the soft shelters inside of this eastern region of the Ingalls Air Base were destroyed. The hardened shelters did survive. They didn't even come under attack. But this is the only Russian air base that we can speak to in all of Western Russia that actually has any kind of hardened shelters. What's even funnier is that the strategic bombers, which make up, oh look man, they updated all of the satellite pictures around this area. So they have the Chop Shop Tu-95 still sitting around, and they also have what appears to be only two strategic bombers on the satellite picture, one Tu-95 and one Tu-160. But it is quite clear that they do not expend the kind of money that the United States would expend to, say, put these aircraft inside of hangars or hardened shelters or anything like that. They don't have any of that. The Russian military is wildly underfunded, even in the current conflict, where we've seen that Russian budget increases for the military have surpassed around 400%. Pre-war, their annual military budget was $55 billion. To put that into perspective, that is the state of Israel's military budget, including U.S. military assistance to the tune of about $25 billion annually. So the Russian military was spending as much on their armed forces as Israel, which is a state that is quite literally minuscule to the size of Russia. They were also spending that same amount of money on their military budget, including U.S. foreign assistance. So it is quite obvious at this point that the Russian Federation is trying to make a stopgap in an emergency where the Ukrainians are clearly taking advantage of this significant budget cut that's now being felt in the present day quite clearly by the Russian Air Force. But we have also
you've heard, by the way, that the Russians want to cut the budget for the military yet again. Like, I think Putin announced today that he wants to cut it even more than it currently is right now, which seems impossible because how are they cutting the military budget when they just had to restructure their entire financial system to put more money into the military? It's like, that sounds like some wishful talk to maybe give the Russian civilians some hope that maybe things are going to improve. I just don't see them actually reducing the budget, especially now they're trying to build shelters for their aircraft. That's more money being spent on stuff that they honestly can't really afford because they need to buy more equipment, more ammunition to fight the war against Ukraine. And now they're trying to upgrade their just basic infrastructure to protect their planes. It seems like going down in the budget is probably not going to happen.
I would say it certainly is not. And also, some people are saying some stuff in the chat, and y'all are correct on this. It's just that it's a really big rabbit hole to go down to talk about why the Russian military is so bad off. Yes, if they spread the money properly, they would actually end up doing something. But the issue is that there is corruption at every single level of the Russian military, from the very lowest ranks of the enlisted to the very highest ranks of the generals in the Ministry of Defense itself. There is corruption at every level, and every single one of those people is skimming as much as they can out of the Russian military and trying to put it into their own pockets somehow. That is something that is endemic to most of Eastern Europe that still lives in the post-Soviet era. A lot of former Soviet republics and Warsaw Pact countries didn't really, although a few of the Warsaw Pact countries had this issue to this degree, but a lot of the former Soviet republics, like the Baltic states, Belarus, Ukraine, and Moldova, had these issues to the absolute extremes, also including Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and pretty much all the Stand Series countries. They have all of these issues as well, still to this day, although a lot of the westernized Soviet republics in the Baltics do not have this issue. Nevertheless, it is quite clear that a lot of people are talking at the moment about what is going on with these Russian jets, and the fact that 4 of them have pretty much been knocked out of action again today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so the question right now we've asked the audience on the poll. It says Ukraine's attacked 4 Russian Su-34 fighter jets in Volgograd, and 2 of them were actually destroyed on the tarmac. And what are your thoughts about the Russian issue of protecting their planes? So 74% said Russia is clearly unable to secure its jets, while 9% said Russia will solve the problem soon by building more shelters, and 9% said it's really not a major issue right now at the moment. And I would say it's a huge issue because the entire Operation Spiderweb was due to the fact that they do not have hardened shelters for their bombers nor their aircraft in general, and they're all sitting out in the wide open tarmac, and that's what makes it so easy for Ukraine to go in and destroy these aircraft. So clearly, securing aircraft is not something Russia's really thought about, and now that Ukraine's moving onto Russian soil to literally launch drone attacks right at these airfields, like literally around the perimeter, this is creating a new problem for Russia that they really don't have an answer for just yet. And they're starting to build these soft shelters. And the problem with that, though, the soft shelters will protect against consumer drones. Like, for example, your normal Mavic or DJI drone, it'll protect against that. But Ukraine's developing jet drones that are very, very fast and could probably puncture straight through that soft shelter and probably get to the aircraft anyway and destroy them. So the soft shelters are only a temporary solution. They have to build hard shelters, and that costs a lot of money and it costs a lot of resources too. And right now, Russia really doesn't have either one of those. So I'm with the 75%. Russia's going to be unable to secure its jets, and this is going to be a growing problem that Russia's got to figure out how to protect their planes. So I'm with the 75%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 75% as well. At least in the current conflict, Russia will not be able to actually protect any of their jets at any point because the Ukrainians can easily innovate to overcome the Russian soft shelters that are being built at the moment. Soft shelters are just that. They are incredibly soft, usually comprised of only one layer of usually some sort of a sheet metal. They can be punctured pretty easily, and you can get an ordnance or an explosive into a soft shelter fairly conventionally. It wouldn't take much. The Ukrainians could just develop a drone with a special kind of a warhead on board. It doesn't have to be incredibly large either. It could be quite small, maybe about 50 kilograms in size, that is specially designed to puncture through sheet metal and then have a delayed fuse on board to where it actually explodes deeper inside of the hangar itself and still would cause significant damage to any Russian aircraft inside of a soft shelter like that. So it seems to me that unless the Russians want to rebuild every single one of their air bases to include hardened shelters for their aircraft, this just simply will not be a reality for them. The only other thing that they could try and do, rather than building soft shelters, is to improve their air defenses, which seems to be a far-flung notion that may as well be a dream of the Russian Federation at this point, rather than any kind of a practical, actionable reality. There is no way that the Russian Federation would be able to create a sufficient enough air defense perimeter around their air bases and strategic infrastructure to be able to avoid Ukrainian attacks. For years now, the Ukrainians have been able to take advantage of this, and we have never seen that the Russian Federation, outside of Moscow's air defense ring perimeter, have actually been able to protect anything inside of the Russian Federation to any significant degree. And we were also able to hear a bombshell about that today from the Republic of Turkey, which many of y'all know that Turkey does Turkey things. And one of the things that Turkey does that is a Turkey thing, which is the only way we can describe it, and just for anyone who's new here tonight, Turkey doing Turkey things is something that we say here on the channel because Turkey, while being a NATO member, is probably the least NATO member that could be imagined at the moment, to the point that they actually own Russian S-400 air defense systems, which I'll pull up for y'all right here. These are the S-400s, some of the most advanced air defense systems in the world. There was one S-500 that existed for a short time, which I'll show y'all right here. This system was actually destroyed in Crimea, from what we understand, so we do not know of any other functional S-500 air defense batteries that exist anywhere in the world. So really, in theory, the S-400 is the best missile-based air defense system in the world, at least according to what the Russians claim. The Russians have an old saying, and this has actually been the case since the days of the Soviet Union. America invests in planes, and we invest in the missiles that will shoot their planes down. Pretty much showing that they developed their doctrine around having a really strong air defense system, or a series of air defense systems, that would ensure that while the Russians may not be able to own the skies, they'll be able to deny the United States any access to the skies over any battlefield at any point. That is at least what the Russians have claimed. The Turks today have stated otherwise. The Turks actually own several S-400 missile defense systems, and they have stated today, in quite a shock, that the S-400s are not that good. They have claimed that they are incapable of providing full-fledged protection, and we've also been able to hear subsequent statements that apparently the Turks are going to be looking into possibly getting different air defense systems provided by the United States. So they're now going to be pursuing possibly purchasing Patriot missile defense systems to eventually replace the S-400s, which they bought and then found out pretty soon that they were actually lemons and actually were not that good. So the best air defense...
That's honestly really good news for the United States, though, because with Turkey being such a fence-riding country, like they really don't know really where they stand half the time. They're sort of wobbling between the pro-Russian side and the pro-Western side, and they don't really know where they're trying to go, really. And also they make statements against Israel too. If we sell them Patriots, that gives us the same power that we have over Ukraine. Of course, Turkey will have to replenish their Patriot stocks occasionally. They'll have to buy more missiles, and that gives us more leverage over Turkey. So that actually turns out to be a pretty good thing. The Russians built a crappy air defense system because it actually gives us more leverage in the West to keep Turkey in line, so that way they don't start going haywire again.
And I would have to say, I think I see a lot of people say, no, don't give him a Patriot. I would give him a Patriot because the reality, folks, here's the truth. The Patriot is on the way out. The THAAD is the air defense system of the future here in America. So we're going to be retiring a lot of Patriots. Why not give them to the Turks so that way they have to rely on American missile purchases to be able to keep their air defense alive? And it's incredibly clear, folks, especially from what's going on in Ukraine and in Iran, that the air war is the war. If you are losing the skies over your country, or you can't control the skies over your country, you have already lost the war at that point. So the Turks will know that if we have them, suffice it to say, by the balls for the large part, because they have to buy American missiles to be able to defend their skies, that makes it a little bit easier to have a level understanding with the Turks that what is in America's interest or what's in the greater West's interest is also in their interest as well. Otherwise, they might see that their missile defense systems might be out of missiles here incredibly soon. You never know. But it is an interesting and good thing to hear, and I think that the United States should sweep in immediately and offer to sell them some wonderful Patriot air defense systems. No one's ever complained about a Patriot. The Israelis have it. No one has. The Patriots are pretty much top-of-the-line air defense systems, even with them being multiple decades old at this point. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on out of that news in the Republic of Turkey, because we've also been able to hear, speaking of the Russian air defenses not really being that good, and the fact that Russian Air Force aircraft are pretty much sitting ducks on their airfields, that the Russians have actually gone out of their way to threaten Estonia today, due to something that deals with air power. And that is the fact that Estonia is actually allowing the United States to base F-35 aircraft as a part of the U.S. Air Force inside of the country. This is actually a picture of a U.S. Air Force F-35 that was stationed in Estonia a little while ago. This was actually a photo shoot that they took of it. And you can actually see the American flag, the Estonian flag, and the NATO flag all flying side by side in the photo shoot to make it incredibly clear that the United States Armed Forces and the U.S. government does stand with Estonia as one of the NATO frontier states that borders the Russian Federation. According to the Russian Federation spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, aka the Rat, he has stated that Estonia's willingness to host F-35 jets belonging to other NATO states on its territory territory poses an immediate danger to Russia, as F-35s are capable of carrying nuclear weapons. He called Estonia's position escalatory. And it appears to me that the Russian Federation is starting to understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of the stick. I want to make this incredibly clear. There are no nuclear weapons stored or housed inside of Estonia or any of the Baltic states or Poland at this moment. The furthest east that we have nuclear weapons deployed, at least for U.S. forces, is inside of Germany. And we have about 2 or 3 tactical B-61 gravity bombs that could be used at any given moment in Europe that could be mounted onto the F-35s in Germany or any other nuclear-capable aircraft. F-35s, or specifically the F-35A, was rated by the Air Force at Eglin Air Force Base as nuclear-capable. It can carry and drop the B-61 tactical nuclear bomb. However, just because they are rated to be nuclear capable does not mean that they are a major threat to be deployed in Estonia. These aircraft are clearly conventionally loaded out. They either have a significant air-to-air ordnance or a very limited air-to-ground ordnance, especially if they're not using any sorts of external hardpoints. Because of that, it's quite obvious and pressingly clear that the Russian Federation is whining. And also, I have to remind you all that if the Russians are whining about that, then if the Russians want to see F-35s removed from Estonia, I think that they should start first by removing all of their nuclear weapons in Belarus out of Belarus. I think that that would be a pretty good exchange at the moment, because I think that they pushed that forward a while ago, saying that they were going to punish the West, and now that we have just a technically nuclear-capable aircraft in Estonia, they want to make it sound like Estonia and NATO at large is escalating against the Russians. So maybe they'll want to try and reassess their position in Europe, and then maybe we'll consider removing our F-35s from Estonia. But I'd highly doubt it, because they're not nuclear-armed, there's no nuclear weapons in Estonia, and Estonia is a sovereign state that has the right and reserves the ability to request or invite the armed forces of any country, including the United States of America, including the U.S. Air Force's F-35As, into their country at any moment that they choose. So the Russians, in short, can get bent. But beyond that, I see many are speaking about the fact as to whether or not the Turks should be able to purchase Patriots or not. And what are people thinking about that, man? Are they thinking that's a good idea or a bad one?
All right. So believe it or not, this is actually controversial. Looks like about 48% of the audience said yes, sell Turkey some Patriot air defense systems, and 39% said no, do not sell Turkey the Patriot system. And honestly, I'm with the Enforcer. The Patriot is becoming a dated system. It's obviously very effective, though. It's like clearly much more effective than the S-400. But at the same time, though, it's not the state-of-the-art system that, of course, would be the THAAD, I believe. That would be the more state-of-the-art air defense system that we currently have. I'm not saying to sell them the THAAD, by the way. We should never sell any country, no matter how friendly or I guess how much of an ally they are. We should never sell them our top stuff. That's probably not a wise idea, even with our closest allies, because we need to keep the best for our country and make sure we have the edge. But I would say when it comes to the Patriot, it gives us an opportunity, like I mentioned, to sort of corral Turkey a little bit and also have some more leverage over them. Not because I'm saying that Turkey needs to be bossed around, but Turkey has a tendency to sort of go off the beaten path a little bit sometimes, and not really sometimes, actually quite a lot. And that's why they're known for doing Turkey things, as we say in air quotes, because they like to ride the fence quite a bit, because they're trying to grow themselves as a regional power in the Middle East. And by trying to do that, they tend to flip-flop quite a bit. So I would say sell them the Patriots just solely for the reason that that'll help keep Turkey in line a little bit more and ensure that they comply with the West and they don't go off course and start going haywire, considering they're a member of NATO. So I'm with the 48%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I think it's a pretty decent idea to sell them Patriots. One, it produces jobs here in America to be able to ship those Patriots over, and also have an endless supply of customers that buy the missiles that are pretty much the batteries that are not included with the Patriot missile launcher. To quickly show you all this is actually a map of current Patriot missile system operators, and the list is actually a little extensive. There's Morocco, the United States, Spain, the Netherlands, Germany, Poland, Sweden, Ukraine, Romania, Greece, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, Qatar, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. All of those countries are currently operators of the Patriot missile defense system. We're actually going to be giving some to Ukraine here in the future that are being retired out of Israel, but I would say, how bad of an idea could it be for us to sell the Patriots? Because remember, folks, it's not necessarily about whether the Turks are, as a government, are good people or not. Yeah, I would agree, they're really sketch, but this allows us to curb the sketchiness to a degree, because if you have a sketchy guy And for him to possibly do his sketchy things, he has to have air defense, and we give him the air defense, but the batteries aren't included, so you have to buy the missiles, and then we're the ones who sell the missiles, and we kind of get to set the standards as to, if you want more of our missiles, you're not going to do this, or you're fine doing that. We get a decent amount of control over Turkey. And this means that by selling them the Patriots, we can actually reel them in a little bit, at least in on the diplomatic level, by using the Patriot missile sales as leverage. And it's significant leverage because, as we all know, air defense in the modern world is key to national defense. If you do not have air defense, you do not have national defense. So this is probably one of the best ways to start reeling in the Turks and start to curb their I guess you could say foreign policy ambitions, at least for their regional sphere in the Middle East, as well as the Balkans as well. That'll start to curb them a little bit, and they'll start to become the NATO ally that we've always loved and cherished, that the Republic of Turkey has pretty much always been up until the past few decades. So I think it wouldn't be that bad of an idea, at least in practice and in my theory. And on top of that, it's going to make sure to keep the folks who produce the Patriot missiles in pretty much good employment. They will have customers. They already have a decent list of customers around the world. But adding the Turks to it will ensure that they will always have a decent stream of business, or at least a little bit of additional purchase orders that are coming through every year, which will help them to pad their pockets, keep some Americans at work in jobs, and also help us to continue to grow the GDP here at home, and hopefully the quality of living along with it. So I don't think it's a bad idea whatsoever. If they're buying, we're selling, as long as they're doing the right thing. But outside of that, speaking of countries that are wanting to purchase or possibly look into getting new weapons, we have been able to hear of a country that is possibly looking to change out something else. It's the running trend, folks, of the week, or at least today, that Russian weapon systems suck. And even the Iranians are starting to realize that, and they're starting to shed off Russian weaponry and look for a replacement. Y'all are not going to believe it when I tell y'all, but the Iranians are already looking to replace their future Su-35s with Chengdu J-10Cs.
What?
They're already looking to replace the brand new Su-35 with the Chengdu J-10.
That's kind of interesting, by the way. I wonder if they're doing that because they saw how Pakistan performed with the Chinese jets, and they're thinking, okay, if Pakistan did somewhat good with them, maybe we should go get some too, instead of getting the Russian ones.
It's possible. It's possible that that's the case. This is the Su-35, by the way, folks, and Iran actually has a standing purchase order that has not been fulfilled yet because of the war in Ukraine for about 30 to 35 Su-35s. There is a lot of acquisition politics that's going into this at the moment. One, this purchase order was actually made about 4 or 5 years ago, and 5 years later, the Russians have still not delivered a single Su-35 to Iran. Generally because the Russians have been taking all of those produced Su-35s in the meantime and have been pushing them into service in the Russian Air Force instead, and pretty much pushing this order off indefinitely. Another thing is that the Su-30SM, which is pretty much the Su-35 export variant for India, performed poorly in the India-Pakistan border conflict that lasted about a week. We understand that at least 1 or 2 Su-30SMs were shot down by Pakistan that was using the Chengdu J-10s over the course of that conflict, which is starting to show either the Indian Air Force sucks, which is what I generally go with, or the Su-35 is a bad aircraft. While I'm generally one to dog on Russian equipment, and the Su-35 definitely doesn't have a great track record in Ukraine, I still lean towards the Indian Air Force just sucks because they also lost a MiG-29 and a Rafale in the same period of time. And there's no way that you lose all of these aircraft. The Rafale is definitely an undoubtedly great aircraft unless your Air Force just sucks. So I'm generally with the idea of the Air Force sucks. Iran is apparently analyzing it differently. One, they haven't gotten a single Su-35 in 5 years, so that's largely starting to knock it out of the picture. And two, they may be believing that because of its performance in India, they might suck. So they're actually wanting to get Chengdu J-10s. This is also showing a little bit of a shift. It's once again showing that Russia as an arms producer is falling off. Everyone keeps coming back with the consumer reviews on Yelp, and the Russians are getting 2 stars and 1 stars every single time. From the Turks, the Indians, and so on. Everyone is saying these systems suck, whether it be air defense, whether it be aircraft, tanks, you name it, they generally are saying it's not good. And everyone's starting to look towards the Chinese, as a reliable arms supplier. And there actually is a good reason for that. One, the Chengdu actually isn't that bad, at least in theory. Of course, in theory, I have to put that out there. It has not been tested yet against an actual competent military. But the Chengdu J-10 is actually largely built off of copy technology out of the F-16s. Another thing that's interesting is that it actually has access to a more advanced array of air-to-air and air-to-surface weaponry that the Su-35 would not have access to, generally meaning that the J-10, while being a lot smaller than an Su-35, does much better in the multi-role capacity than any Russian aircraft could. And it appears that the Iranians are possibly trying to see a modernization of their air force and move away from these ancient ideas of air superiority aircraft pretty much creating airspace denials and moving on into multi-role aircraft that will not only be able to conduct air interdiction missions, but may be able to conduct air-to-ground missions as well in support of their ground forces or in attacks against the Israelis. Nevertheless, it appears quite clear that the running theme of the day, at least from Iran and Turkey, is that Russian weapon systems, whether they fly or whether they drive, are terrible, and there needs to be some replacement for them to some degree. Nevertheless,
but my question is this though: where is Iran getting the funds to be able to buy these jets from China? Because that's a huge question right now. Iran's under massive sanctions, and the U.S. just abandoned their plan to lift the sanctions off Iran today. Those sanctions are going to remain on Iran. So it makes you wonder, Iran's not a rich country, obviously, and they're not making too much money these days. And they're now having to replenish all their stocks of missiles that they just got done firing at Israel. So they got to spend money on that. They got to spend money on the normal government functioning. And now they're expecting to buy brand new Chinese fighter jets. That seems a little bit odd. I wonder if China's going to give them on loan or maybe give them a discount or something. It's like, how are they expecting to get these? Because their last jets that they had were F-4s and F-14s too. So it's like, how are they going to buy these?
Well, interestingly enough, it says that they aren't going to purchase them. They say they're in intensified negotiations for them at the moment. So it shows that they're trying to haggle for the price possibly. But the Chinese may actually decide to provide these to the Iranians, much like we would provide the Patriots to Turkey. And that's to start to bring Iran under a stronger amount of Chinese control, because Iranian defense will rely on Chinese arms. So it's largely an extension of the Belt and Road program. So we may actually see that they get J-10s instead of Su-35s, because the Chinese will want to extend their Belt and Road program any way possible at this point, considering that they've ran into a significant amount of roadblocks and major issues over about the past decade and a half trying to implement the plan. And they may give these J-10s at discount prices, but then charge significant prices for their weapon systems that are attached to the J-10s, or may even use those as future leverage against the Iranians to largely do China's bidding or else. So it's going to be a little bit of an interesting development to see how that turns out. But if the Chinese provide these J-10s to Iran, and from if we're able to hear that they are at discount prices, that makes it incredibly clear that the Chinese are attempting to extend some sort of control over the Iranians. But outside of that, we've also been able to hear some more interesting things happening in Iran, as we were able to hear that apparently the Mossad stated today that if anyone in Iran sees that the IRGC suddenly receives a phone call or message on their personal phone, they should move away from them immediately, possibly suggesting there's a pager operation about to happen soon, or just trying to make everyone really scared in Iran about being around anyone in the IRGC. We also got to hear...
I think they're trying to make them scared. Because that doesn't make any sense at all if they're actually planning a second pager operation, this time on the Iranians directly, that they would warn them ahead of time. That seems like a psyop right there to me. Like, they're obviously, the Iranians are probably going to take that with a grain of salt, but they will be paranoid, wondering, hey, is that pager over there actually good? They'll probably end up like throwing their pagers out if they use those in the Iranian government, or throwing out some type of radios, because they'll be paranoid just from that statement.
Possibly so, but I have a feeling, Matt, that a lot of calls here are going to be going straight to voicemail for a little while because of that. We also got to hear that the air defense was active in western Tehran in the early hours of Saturday, according to eyewitnesses. This literally happened about 20 minutes before we went live, and we do not have any explanation at this moment as to why the air defenses were firing. We were able to hear that there were some explosions in southwestern Tehran, possibly suggesting some type of an air attack, or it may be suggesting complete pandemonium by the Iranian air defense. And once again, like they were throughout most of the war, they may be firing up into the skies at literally nothing. So we'll have to wait and see what kind of developments or information we can get out of that. But it also appears quite clear that Iran is working towards rebuilding their nuclear program. We have been able to see satellite footage clearly showing us that construction vehicles are now at the Fordo uranium enrichment plant, excavating at the tunnel entrances to the facility, and also trying to reopen it back up to Iranian officials and nuclear program workers. We can see the return of the vans. These are not the dump trucks we saw a little while ago. These are just contractor vans, and it appears that they are actually trying to get back into the facility and try and reopen it for business, or at least assess the damage inside of Fordo. We also got to see further down at the Isfahan research campus that it appears that there is some sort of a tunnel system that is now being opened at the sites. At least from what we're hearing right now, satellite imagery reveals Iran opened a tunnel at the underground complex beneath the Isfahan uranium conversion facility, located around 100 meters deep, significantly deeper than Fordo, and deemed impenetrable. The images suggest Iran may be moving highly enriched uranium or installing centrifuges at this location. After the Fordo strike, U.S. sources confirmed the existence of this deeper facility, which was not targeted by B-2 bombers due to its depth, which apparently is actually beyond the range of the GBU-57 MOPS. It does appear that the Iranians are starting to get back into some sketchy business and are actually preparing to begin their nuclear weapons research and development program once more, just days after the conclusion of the U.S. airstrikes in Operation Midnight Hammer that hammered and destroyed 3 of the most critical nuclear facilities inside of the country. It's making it incredibly clear at this point that the Iranians have no ambition or wish to ever stop their nuclear weapons development program, and as long as the Islamic Republic of Iran continues to exist, they are going to keep pressing forward towards the development and usage of nuclear weapons for them to use on their enemies, whether they be in the Middle East or beyond. We've also been able to hear some additional news as well from inside of Israel, that apparently the United States of America is seeing a little bit of a depletion of the THAAD battery, at least recently, as we were able to hear that the THAAD battery has been heavily depleted. Around 15 to 20% of the global THAAD anti-missile stockpile has been expended in just 11 days. That apparently also cost the United States around $800 million, which is actually pretty cheap when you think about it. We shot down, hundreds or dozens of Iranian ballistic missiles for about $800 million. That's not too bad, at least on military budgeting levels. That's quite literally less than a fraction. Pretty impressive, actually. But beyond that, it does appear that the decent amount of the current existent missile stockpiles were heavily depleted, which is also making it quite clear, at least at the moment, that the United States of America will most likely start to be filling out a lot more purchase orders for THAAD missiles. I want to make this a little bit clear for folks, because a lot of people don't get this in the acquisitions department. THAAD missiles are not like a non-renewable resource. Weapons are not non-renewable. You can just build more of them. So while 15 to 20% of the U.S.'s international stockpile was expended, that doesn't mean that we're down a whole bunch of missiles we'll never have back. This isn't Dungeons and Dragons, where you end up having like one enchanted sword, and once you use it and it's broken, it's gone. You can just build more of them. So you will be able to get more of these missiles in the future, and this most likely means that Congress will be approving special funding or budgeting for the acquisition, or the Department of Defense will start to appropriate the funding to acquire more THAAD missiles here in the future. We may also even see that the Congress has it brought before them by the Department of Defense that due to the current situation in the world, there needs to be an impressively high surplus of THAAD anti-missile systems or anti-missile interceptors, and we could see that new factories are open in the United States, producing more higher paying jobs to be able to produce these kinds of missiles at a far larger rate, at a far more continuous scale than we've seen in the past so far. But it does also appear that while we have heard that news out of the Middle East, the Israelis are starting to get a little bit busy, at least in southern Lebanon, and they've gotten back to bombing the Hezbollah. I get so confused about the groups these days. It's really hard to keep them track. But all of them are Iranian backed in the line, so it doesn't really take too much to get them correct. But we did get to see that the Hezbollah forces within southern Lebanon are being bombed again. And we were able to get some footage as well, showing them bombing southern Lebanon. Take a look.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Oh dear. That's bad.
الله الله أكبر لك الضرب الثاني لك
Oh, praise the Lord.
الله شو ولع
Man, this guy is like Kenneth Copeland on a Sunday. He's in there, praise the Lord. It's like,
Allahu
man, it's
Akbar.
He saw the explosions. He
ما
started to
في
preach.
واحد.
quite some significant airstrikes, mind you, as well.
الله أكبر كفرت بنيت.
But that's the end of the clip there. But it does appear that Hezbollah is once again under the gun, as the Israelis have been able to turn their attention away from Iran and back towards their home fronts on the northern Israeli border and in the Gaza Strip. But beyond that, we also have a lot of people talking about the nuclear facilities inside of Iran and the fact that the Iranians are getting busy. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so now that we've seen Iran deploy excavators and construction equipment around the Fordo nuclear site for allegedly for rebuilding, because they're doing obviously some rebuilding activities there that we see from satellite, what are your thoughts? 51% said it means the facility is salvageable and it was not completely destroyed, while 21% said it means Iran is just cleaning up, and 19% said it's a 50-50 chance of bad activities. And honestly, in my opinion, I know this goes against the public narrative right now, but I would say that Iran probably would not be wasting time, resources, and money on Fordo if it was properly destroyed all the way. Because to do that, they must believe that they can somehow clean it up and maybe make it usable again. And if it was totally destroyed, that wouldn't really be possible. The entire facility would be caved in, and to fix it would probably be way more costly than it would be to simply start a new one or go somewhere else to a pre-existing site. So it must mean that the facility is somewhat salvageable in some way or another, and they're bringing in all these excavators to clear out the rubble to rebuild it all the way. So to me, it's a bad sign. It indicates that Fordo is probably not all the way out, and we might need to do a second run on it to fully take it out before the Iranians start rebuilding the whole thing and also make it more fortified potentially. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that, in my opinion, I do believe that this may be showing that they're trying to conduct a damage assessment at the moment. We're not entirely sure. We don't believe at the moment that they've actually been able to get into the facilities, so they're most likely trying to excavate the entrances to get into the facility and then assess the damage or recover anything that's salvageable, or even see if they could just restart these programs inside of these facilities. I would have to say that it may be salvageable, considering that they're trying to get in there. There's some sort of a chance that's been assessed at the moment that the conducting of any sort of excavations or expensive operations to re-enter or access the facility may present some sort of results that appears to show that something has survived inside the facilities. Otherwise, they wouldn't be undertaking this venture. If they assumed that everything was completely destroyed, considering how cash-strapped the Iranian government is, they wouldn't be going in and digging out the entrances to go inside and try and see what's going on there. So I would generally say it probably does mean that there is something of some type that is salvageable in there, whether it be just a part of the facility, whether it be a couple of centrifuges, or whether it be the entirety of the facility itself that may end up being possibly reusable again. That is yet to be seen, but it does appear that there is something that may have survived. Otherwise, they wouldn't be trying to get in there and conduct a damage assessment to see what is salvageable or what may not be salvageable. But with that,
Also, by the way, I see some people saying maybe the Iranians are going back to try to dig out some workers that are trapped there. According to what we know, and if you believe the reports that are out there, Iran knew ahead of time that facility was going to get struck, and they got all the workers out, and also allegedly trying to get some of the uranium out as well. But now there's some ambiguity about that because the U.S. is claiming they couldn't, and the Iranians are saying they could, and the Israelis are saying that they could as well. So I think the Israelis might have backed off their statement, but they initially started out by saying that most of the stuff was gotten out of Fordo. So right now it comes down to basically whoever you believe is telling the truth at this point. So honestly, I'm with the Enforcer. I think they're trying to go back down there to get some centrifuges out, or maybe even make the facility functional again to maybe start using it again based on the sound of it. Because like the Enforcer also said, it's very expensive to start doing that kind of stuff. And with a regime that's broke and trying to buy brand new jets, why would you waste money, time, and resources on Fordo if it was properly destroyed all the way? It wouldn't make much sense. It's possible maybe they're doing it just to save face and pretend like it's not broken. I see people also saying that in the chat. But once again, it takes time and resources and money, and they wouldn't just do that just for the sake of it, in my opinion.
I would have to agree. But still, it is an interesting and significant development, at least within the region. We still have a lot of more news to go tonight. Inside the United States, in Europe, just a little bit's left in Europe, and then we'll be moving on into the Ukraine war itself. But before we get into all of that, I do understand that some folks have thrown in some questions. I want to make sure that we get to just a couple of them, at least for now. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night. This one goes to JC Atkins, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, JC, as well, for that support. He said, I hope I'm in better graces tonight. And take a chat, please. And from your favorite LSA Navy NCO.
Hey, and a big shout out to our favorite LSA Navy NCO, JC Atkins. I got to thank you incredibly for support. You're always in good graces here. You're always in good graces. I got to thank you for being here again tonight and enjoying this channel and helping it to keep running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to continue to keep this thing rolling. And we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew, in honor of JC Atkins?
All right, so that live chat goes to Bryce, and he said, would a Moab dropped on the Fordo nuclear site do much or just surface damage?
A Moab dropped on the site would most likely only do surface damage. Moab is generally not designed to actually be able to penetrate or explode anywhere inside the ground. The Moab is actually a thermobaric bomb, which is a little bit different than the massive ordnance penetrator that we saw. The massive ordnance penetrator weighs about 30,000 pounds. It's a very heavy bomb, but very little of that's actually explosive filler. Only about 6.7 thousand pounds of it's actual explosives. The rest of it is a steel core penetrator. So pretty much just imagine it's a big armor-piercing bullet, and it explodes once it gets deep enough, after its delayed fuse goes off for a set period of time. With that in mind, the Moab is entirely different. Most of the Moab is actually explosive filler, and specifically, it creates a thermobaric explosion. Thermobaric explosions really aren't made to target and destroy hardened structures or bunkers underground, several hundred feet underground. It generally is made to be able to destroy softer targets or weaker structures that are on the surface. Generally, the only time we ever saw the Moab used in service was actually in Afghanistan, near to the side of a mountain, where it was believed that about a mile or several miles of Taliban tunnel works were built along the underside of that mountain. Not incredibly deep, mind you. They were only a few feet deep. The Moab was able to explode pretty much almost on the surface. It airbursted a couple of feet off of the surface, and it destroyed all of the tunnels within that area, and it also killed all of the Taliban inside those tunnels and all of the Taliban that were on the surface surrounding it. The way thermobarics work is incredibly interesting. They actually generally liquefy your internal organs practically immediately. It's an instant death, by the way. It's not anything barbaric or gruesome, but it is something that does sound pretty damn gruesome, I will admit. But beyond that, that's generally how the Moab works and what it's designed to do versus what the MOP or the GBU-57 was actually designed to do. It's an incredibly different sort of a system. So as far as my answer would go, dropping a Moab really wouldn't work at all. The MOP was the right bomb for the job, and if we do not have a bomb that can reach as deep as the MOP, that means we don't have anything for that sort of a job, and then we have to figure out something different, possibly securing the facility on the ground and then destroying it while it's under our control. That may be the next step forward, as that would really be our only option at that point. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, Cypress 96, if I said 3,000 pounds, it was supposed to be 30,000 pounds. I'm pretty sure I said 30,000, but I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes I slip up on my words, but it is a 30,000 pound bomb. The GBU-57 is, and I believe the Moab is also very close in that kind of weight, but most of the Moab is explosive filler. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least with the information I have at the moment. And a big thanks to you once again for sponsoring this channel and helping it to keep rolling, JC Atkins, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel rolling and keep it running even tonight. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Robert Betancourt, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Robert, for that $20 support and also helping to keep the channel running. And I do not see a comment attached, but we do appreciate that very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a big shout out to Robert Betancourt. I got to thank everyone who's supporting the channel massively tonight. All of you folks are responsible for helping this channel to keep on running. Y'all are the sponsors of these shows for the large part. And if it wasn't for the folks who supported these streams, we wouldn't be able to run these streams each and every single night. These streams run ad-free and sponsor-free, and it's the folks in the Lee Spring Army who go out of their way to support this channel when they don't have to, that make this news coverage possible for us every single night. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news for the night.
All right, so this one goes to AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who's a longtime channel legend, and he put in a $10 donation. And he said, couldn't Chinese and Russians just get video, photos, and information from the Fordo nuclear site from the Iranians to know how effective the GBU-57 actually was on that facility?
They actually kind of could. The issue is, though, is that considering that they are not able to see what actually happened underground, and it appears the Iranians haven't even been able to at this point either, because they haven't been able to get in there, it's really hard to assess the kind of damage that the GBU-57 caused. But if they wanted to really see the kind of damage that a GBU-57 caused, the Department of Defense actually had a video displaying the use of a GBU-57 in a test and the kind of explosive force that it had underground. And really quickly, Matthew, do we have that video on our Twitter somewhere? Because I believe we actually do.
Yes. Yes, I can go grab it real quick. Let me grab it, and I'll text you when I have it.
Yeah, go and grab that really quickly so that we can make sure to show that to everyone, because the U.S. Department of Defense actually published the original testing footage from the original tests of the GBU-57 way back in the early 2010s. The GBU-57 was put into service in 2011. And it actually did show that the GBU-57 can penetrate a significant ground layer before it explodes, with its explosion being largely delayed due to a large delayed fuse. So it's actually incredibly interesting how the system works, how far it could actually go down. But the Russians could most likely take a look at that footage, or the Chinese could, and assess the success or the abilities of that sort of a bomb that way as well. That's probably the best way to do it, to be entirely honest. But hopefully we'll be able to get that here incredibly soon. Also, someone said the explosion didn't look that big. Oh, it's quite big. It's quite big. It's a 6.7 thousand pound explosive going off. I mean, if you think the bombs that have been going off in Kyiv or in Gaza are big, those are about 1,000 to 2,000 pounds each on average. The GBU-57 is 3 times the size, almost 3.5 times the size of any bomb you would usually see dropped by the Israeli Air Force in Gaza or a Russian cruise missile slamming into Kyiv. So they are absolutely massive, even still, with most of the weight of the bomb. Go ahead.
Also, we do have that footage, by the way, on the top of our Twitter page if you want to go take a look.
All right, and so let's take a look at that. But here is the actual test. Because we actually test our bombs, folks. We test them before we use them. So take a gander at this. Here is the testing footage. Here comes the mop. That's it right there. These things are massive, by the way. It's a little bit deceptive how small this all looks. That right there is about a normal-sized 2.5 to 3 foot tall traffic cone right there, by the way, just to give you a little bit of scale as to how big the bomb is. The bomb's pretty damn big. Let me go see if I can actually show y'all a GBU-57 mop. Let me go see if I can get y'all a picture of one of these. There you go. That's actually the size of the bomb. Just to give you all a little bit of an idea of how big this thing really is. It's not a small bomb at all. This isn't like a little 500-pound or a 250-pound bomb. This thing is huge. I mean, look at it compared to the size of a B-2. The thing's a beast.
That's massive. 30,000 pounds, isn't it?
Yeah, 30,000 pounds. A B-2 can carry 2 of these things at the same time. But that is generally the size. These things are not small at all. They are massive. But we can actually see it penetrating the ground layer right there, just right behind the camera. You can actually see that the stabilizing fins that also can guide the bomb to a limited extent also retract as soon as the detonation fuse is set off by the impact. So check that out. The impact is right about there, and you can immediately see that the fins retract to allow it to slide into the earth quicker and with less resistance. We can then see that it exploded in the tunnel below that was simulating an underground facility, and the explosion came venting out immediately. So here's the actual testing footage showing a whole bunch of different values of the actual penetration of the ground layer itself. So here it comes. We then see it hit onto the ground layer immediately. That was right there when the video paused. When you see that it hit, the stabilizing fins retract immediately to lessen the resistance of the bomb as it goes through the soil. When you see it make it through.
That is a hell of a camera filming that, too. That is wildly good slow motion.
Yeah, I mean, it is actually incredible. It's also really cool to see all of the testing data that they had set up for this, the different points of views, the measurement stick, all that stuff. It's actually really interesting to watch testing footage. But anyways, we can see it make it through the ground layer here into the cavern below. By the way, folks, this cavern is supposed to simulate some sort of an underground facility, just to give you all an idea of what it would look like if the GBU-57 actually penetrated the facility itself and then blew up inside of it. So you can actually see it coming through the roof right there, at least what remains of actually just about damn near everything of the actual steel penetrator exists. You can still see the actual beginning of the fuse at the beginning of the bomb still intact right there. And then once it makes it to this point, it explodes right there. And it completely destroys the inside of the facility. That's actually the entrance crater. And that is the damage inside. So as you can see, it's
Also, like I just got a side note real quick. Go back to that last piece of footage right there where it exploded. Scroll back a bit. How the like? Here's my question. This is a technical point. How they have the camera survive a hit from a mop? It's literally filming the explosion right there on it. Like, how the hell did the camera survive that?
You know what? That's a great question. Let's see if we can look at that back wall and see where the camera was. I actually do not see the camera back there, so I'm a little bit interested how that camera did survive.
Is it like an X-ray image or something? It's like, how are they looking through like a wall or something? That's crazy how that survived.
You know, I think I might know. They had a little they had like a trick or a gimmick, whatever you want to call it, that was actually set up to film the explosions of the atomic bombs as well and have the camera survive. And it was some sort of a lens and mirror trick where the camera wasn't actually getting hit by the full force of the nuclear explosion, but it was able to view the whole thing off of a mirror. And so it was obscured from the heat, the radiation, and so on, but still could see what was going on.
Also, people were saying the camera probably didn't survive. It had to survive because it caught the entire explosion all the way through. That if that thing was destroyed by the initial shockwave, it would have been gone the moment that thing went off. Like that camera would have been destroyed. So I see some people saying maybe some mirrors were used or something. That's possible, I guess, but I really doubt that that was a live feed footage right there. It seemed like the camera did survive it, at least through the entire first initial explosion.
I mean, possibly, yeah, that is true as well. But beyond the hypotheses of how the camera survived, one thing is clear from this footage here of the testing, that this thing can go through, one, a great deal of soil before it explodes, and two, also by the way, this was a limited test. The GBU-57 can go through about 200 feet of soil or so, or surface layer, which is pretty much just the earth. This is about 50, so this is only a quarter of what the mop can do in all actual practice and technicality, just to point that out. But outside of that, another thing that's important to remember is that we didn't just drop one of these, we dropped about 9 of them onto Fordo. So there's 9 of these things that went 200 feet down and then exploded in the facility. So these things are specifically designed for that purpose and that job. And I think the Russians and the Chinese could get a good idea of the kind of damage that this thing could cause. But still, once again, this test isn't showing the full abilities of the mop, and nothing will ever show the full abilities of the mop. The U.S. could say right now that the Pickaxe Mountain facility is too far underground to be hit by a mop, and it actually could be well within range of the mop. The mop could make it all the way down there. We just don't know. Usually, the exact abilities of our weapon systems is greatly understated to the public because our enemies are also listening to that information, and if we say exactly what our weapon systems can do, they generally have an idea of what they need to do or what they need to build to be able to counter our system. So a little bit interesting with that whole test, but that would be my best answer to a really good question, UMX10 Speedy Bang Bang. A big thanks to you for the support and throwing in a great question, and I hope that answered that the best I could, at least in my opinion. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are going to be moving on into the rest of our news for the day. And of course, folks, I got to point this out. If you have thrown in a super chat, huge thanks to all of y'all for the support. We are going to be getting to the remainder of our super chats at the end of our news segment, which should be coming up here soon in about 40 minutes or so. So make sure to hang tight, and we'll make sure to get to the rest of those here at the end of the stream. But moving on from that and on into Washington, D.C., we were also able to hear today that the president has made a statement on Iran. It was a very long one, so strap yourselves in. I'm going to read the whole thing for y'all, and we're just going to leave it at what it is. Why would the so-called supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, of the war-torn country of Iran, say so blatantly and foolishly that he won the war with Israel when he knows his statements when he knows his statement is a lie? It is not so. As a man of great faith, he is not supposed to lie. His country was decimated, his 3 evil nuclear sites were obliterated, and I knew exactly where he was sheltered, and would not let Israel or the U.S. Armed Forces, by far the greatest and most powerful in the world, terminate his life. I saved him from a very ugly and ignominious death. I actually did pronounce that correctly, I believe. And he does not have to say, "Thank you, Mr. President." In fact, in the final act of the war, I demanded that Israel bring back a very large group of planes, which are heading directly to Tehran, looking for a big day, perhaps the final knockout. Tremendous damage would have ensued, and many Iranians would have been killed. It was going to be the biggest attack of the war, by far, the greatest and the biggest. No one's ever seen anything like it. During the last few days, I was working on the possible removal of sanctions and other things, which would have given a much better chance to Iran at a full, fast, and complete recovery. The sanctions are biting, but no, instead I get hit with a statement of anger, hatred, and disgust. I immediately dropped all work on sanction relief and more. Iran has to get back into the world order flow, or things will only get worse for them. I've never heard of the world order flow. They are always so angry, hostile, and unhappy, and look at what it has gotten them. A burned out, blown up country with no future, a decimated military, a horrible economy, and death all around them, and some jank-ass Yeezys. They have no hope, and it will only get worse. I wish the leadership of Iran would realize that you often get more with honey than you do with vinegar. Peace. And it appears that the president is not happy with the Ayatollah after the Ayatollah came out and made statements that I obviously thought we were expecting. Like, I thought we were kind of expecting statements like that. No one's generally happy when you blow up their nuclear weapons program that was intent on killing everyone. So, you know,
when's the last time the Ayatollah said thank you for that? Like, honestly, the Ayatollah should show more gratitude for us blowing up his nuclear sites, because we did him a favor by doing that. We saved him.
Man, what does Ukraine and Iran have in common? They have to say thank you. It's like I don't even know anymore. It's like we blew up their shit. I didn't really expect them to tell us thanks. Like that's the last thing I expected. And we heard exactly. Well, at least I heard from the Ayatollah exactly what I was expecting. No one's ever going to say thank you for blowing up their weapons of mass destruction program. So, you know, like, I don't really know why he was acting so shocked that he didn't say thank you.
Yeah, I like how we insisted that Ukraine say thank you, like a hell of a lot more than we're insisting Iran said thank you. And Iran is an enemy. It's like, honestly, who cares who's saying thank you? It's like we're doing stuff out of our own self-interest. We're not doing it for thanks. We're not doing it for like brownie points. Like, oh, look, we went and blew the Ayatollah stuff up. He didn't say thank you. It's like, is that what we're really focused on? Also, we gave Ukraine Patriots, but they didn't say thank you like within 5 seconds. Oh, it's like, is that why we gave them Patriots for the gratitude? It's like, I thought we were giving it because we were supporting their fight for freedom.
Yeah, I don't really get it. I don't know. But now, folks, the Iranians have to say thank you for us blowing up their nuclear facilities. I really, be honest with y'all, I really don't care if they thank us. I'd honestly rather them hate us, to be honest with you. I think that gives, I think that's a reasonable response for them to hate us after we blew up their nuclear program, because while we had to do it, they also want to kill us. So it's going to piss them off when we impede their ability to kill us quicker and easier. So, you know, I'm fine with them being happy. I really don't care what they're thinking, to be entirely honest with y'all. I don't care if they're happy, mad, sad, or, you know, just pouting. The honest truth is, we don't live for the Iranians' approval, and we don't live for the Ayatollah to say thank you to the United States. They're an enemy of the Republic, simply put, so whether they love us or hate us, I don't really care. All I care is that the United States achieved what it needed to achieve, and if they don't like us for that, then that was what it was. Because, I don't know about this, folks. This is kind of a hot take maybe in the modern day, but I don't give a damn if any of the enemies of the Republic like us. At all. I don't care if they respect us or whether they think we're jokes. Because the truth of the matter is that what no matter what they think, they largely live by the benevolence of the U.S. government. Because we could go over there and we could wipe out Putin or Xi or the Ayatollah or Kim Jong-un at any hour of any day. It just requires the order. So I don't really know why in the world we care for these people to respect us or their countries to respect us, because the truth of the matter is that the only reason they have a choice to like us or dislike us is because we allow them the chance to live to have an idea or an opinion on that. So it's something that I really don't care too much about. I don't know why the president was shocked by that, because the reality is they were going to say that. I mean, if the Ayatollah was alive, he's not going to obviously say, I thank the president of the United States for destroying my American Killer 9000 project. I'm really happy that my American Killer 9000 project was blown away. No, he's obviously going to come out and say what he's saying right now. And the response should be, you're lucky we didn't kill you. That honestly ought to be the response. It's not say thank you. It should just be you're lucky to be alive right now and even yapping. So watch your mouth and just wait, because it might be coming back around if you keep excavating the Fordo facility and Isfahan. We're not here to run a personal reality TV show, folks, on whether the Iranians like us or not, or whether we got a rose or where we got kicked out of the house or not. We're here to say they're not going to create a nuclear weapon to kill millions of us, and if they do, there's going to be issues, quite obviously and clearly. But anyways, with that, we also were able to hear that we might end up bombing Iran again. That actually came out a little while after the original statement. According to the president, and I quote, "I would bomb Iran again without question if it turns out that Iran has uranium to the levels of enrichment to make a bomb." They actually kind of have that right now. They do have a small amount of 90% weapons-grade uranium in the country. It's only a couple of kilograms from what we know, but they technically do, so we could bomb them again. It might just be coming around the corner at this point. Honestly, I gotta say, the hot take, folks, why did we stop bombing them? They gave us no reason to stop. Because if y'all remember, they attacked us as the last action of this whole exchange. They fired missiles at the Al Udeid airbase, or the Al Udeid airbase, in Qatar, at U.S. service members. And if we hadn't intercepted them along with the Qataris, those missiles would have landed in that base and ended up killing service members. So I don't really think we should have ever stopped bombing them in the first place, because they're still working towards a nuclear weapons program. As long as the Iranian regime still survives in the country, they're going to keep pressing for the development of these nuclear weapons. And what we proved to them recently is that if they don't have a nuclear weapon, we can bomb them at will. So they're now motivated to have a nuclear weapon. We should go in there and bomb them already. Like, we shouldn't have stopped. We shouldn't have stopped. And I don't believe that we should even give them a chance right now. And this is leading a lot of people to wonder, when's this going to start up again? Is it going to be in a couple of days, months, when, or never? Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So we asked the audience that exact question. We said the U.S. says it's considering bombing Iran again if uranium is enriched to make nukes. And what are your thoughts? 49% said we will bomb Iran again, probably in days and not even months, while 28% said we'll bomb Iran again in months, while 12% said the U.S. will probably not bomb Iran again whatsoever. And I think that Iran is going to step in it once again, because Iran would not be an extremist regime unless they lacked common sense. And Iran obviously lacks common sense. They're rebuilding their nuclear sites, or at least they're bringing in a ton of construction equipment to start again. We already warned them not to do that. And what's the first thing they do? They start bringing in equipment to fix their nuclear sites. Not smart. Also, we're being told by Israel that apparently there's uranium buried underneath the Natanz facility, and Iran's trying to dig that right back up. So not wise either. We've also learned Pickaxe Mountain is right next to one of their pre-existing facilities, and apparently it's an actively used facility that Iran is currently using right now to store some type of materials and centrifuges. Also not wise. So it sounds like Iran is basically begging the United States to come back and send in the Doritos once again. So, you know, honestly, they got what was coming to them the first time. They shouldn't have started enriching uranium to a point where they can make nuclear weapons. It sounds like they're doing it again to me. It sounds like they have not learned a lesson. So honestly, here's my honest assessment. This situation is never going to be over until there's regime changes out of Iran. That's the bottom line. As long as the Ayatollah is in charge, he's an extremist, he's a nut, and he's going to tell all the people under him in the IRGC to keep on going at the peril of the Iranian citizenship. They're going to keep on doing the shenanigans with the uranium and the nukes until finally Israel's forced to either destroy the regime completely, or the United States has to get involved into a war on the ground. So honestly, I say we shouldn't have stopped bombing them in the first place. We had no reason to stop. They were attacking U.S. bases. They put our servicemen at risk. We should have kept going. So if it takes the U.S. government some time to realize that, that's fine. But I suspect we'll probably be eyeballing maybe at the end of this month, or not this month, but at the end of next month, probably toward later July, we'll probably see this start right back up again, is my guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that we're most likely going to end up bombing Iran within months. I don't think this is going to be happening within days. I would actually have to be with the 28% that's saying it's going to happen in months, because the Iranians are clearly going to start restarting their nuclear program. They're already trying to right now by excavating the facilities. So I would say that it's only a matter of time at this point before they start to move back into that again. I don't know why we stopped bombing in the first place. And I did see someone actually say that they fired at us and no one was hurt. That's called diplomacy. But that's not how it works. And I have to use my example again of how this would be interpreted if this was a person-to-person interaction, or we looked at this through a normal legal lens. We did go to law school a little bit, so we have a little bit of understanding of how the law would work. So let's say, here in America, you were angry at someone, and you wanted to kill him. Like, you just, for no reason. Let's just go through this hypothetical scenario as a criminal endeavor. So, you wanted to kill him. You go out there, you find him, you go hop out of your car, whip out the gun, and then you go, shit, I gotta tell him because I'm not gonna be happy if I just shoot him. Hey, asshole, I'm gonna shoot you. And then you fire at him and he dodges the bullet or he gets out of the way before you shoot him. Does that mean that there was no harm, no foul, or does that mean that that guy is charged with attempted murder? He is charged with attempted murder. That's the clear answer. Anyone would charge him with attempted murder because he got out of the car, he expressed clear and open intent that he was wanting to harm or kill the individual that was his target, showing premeditation. So that means that most likely will fall under first-degree attempted murder. And what happened in Qatar was an attempt, at least against U.S. armed forces, of first-degree attempted murder by all definition. It doesn't matter whether they warned us or not. That does not matter at all. What mattered is that down there on the ground in Qatar, under the missile arcs, at the very end of the missile rainbow, if you want to call it that, while those missiles were arcing through the sky, those were about to come down on U.S. service members. If we didn't shoot those down, those guys would have gotten killed. It doesn't matter whether they pre-notified us or not, the intent was there. That was clearly what they were looking for, and if they hadn't pre-notified us, we wouldn't have shot those down. It's kind of like saying the Japanese are going to bomb Pearl Harbor in 1941, but they pre-notified us so we could shoot down most of the planes, and the only bombs and torpedoes that were dropped on Pearl Harbor ended up being misses. Would we view that as no harm, no foul, or would we look at that as the Japanese just tried to attack the fleet at Pearl Harbor and destroy it? I would say that they still tried to destroy the fleet at Pearl Harbor. That's akin to war. And also on top of that, you have to look at it from a diplomatic lens. How something ends largely dictates how people are going to look at it. And the last thing that happened in the Middle East was that the Iranians fired at Israel and the United States, and we did nothing back. That was the end of it. They fired at Qatar. They fired at Israel again when the ceasefire was technically supposed to be in effect by that point, and no one did anything to them. So they got the last word, at least in terms of arms, and now it looks like the Iranians are actually kind of setting the tempo of what's going on in the region, and they can lash out if they want to, and the U.S. and Israel will just kind of have to take the brunt of it and hope that nothing bad happens as a result. So in my opinion, I'd say that we should be going back to bombing them. We shouldn't have stopped in the first place, and we should get in there, and we should deal with the Iranian armed forces as well as their nuclear development sites a second time around. And if we have to, take whatever actions necessary to denuclearize Iran because they're once again working towards it. And once again, folks, if they weren't working towards a nuclear weapon, why did they suspend cooperation with the IAEA? If they had nothing to hide, they would be perfectly fine with the IAEA being inside of their country and continuing to inspect the remaining semi-operational nuclear facilities that they still have. Instead, they cut off all communication with the IAEA because they're going to be trying to rapidly develop a bomb at this point, and they don't even want to have to go through the premise of hiding any developments from the IAEA because they're going to be that busy working on the development of a nuclear weapon.
I wonder, Enforcer, if the hesitancy by the United States is actually for a different reason, a more, I guess you'd say, realistic reason. Because I just thought we used one of our largest munitions that we have, the GBU-57, the bunker, the bunker buster, MOPS, whatever you want to call it. We used a very large munition to try to hit Fordo and also these other nuclear sites. One of the largest munitions we have actually launched from one of our most advanced bombers, which is the B-2 stealth bomber. So I wonder if this operational pause here is to regroup, because from here, where do you go? If we use one of our large munitions and it properly did not destroy the facility, if that is indeed the case, then what do you do this time? Do you go back in with more of them and you hope that it destroys it and maybe be unsuccessful for a second time? Or do you try to ramp something up or go from a different angle to try to actually take these facilities out this time? I wonder if that's what they're trying to figure out and do damage assessments to figure out where we go from here.
I would have to say that is also the case as well. It's a incredibly interesting development in the region, so we'll of course have to keep an eye on it, and that's also a good point to observe as well. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of our news, because I just realized that we still have a lot of news to cover, folks, and especially a good amount of it on the front lines in Ukraine, and I was able to find some incredibly interesting war footage today to show you all of the actual developments happening on the battlefield. Moving on into Britain, though, I'm going to quickly cover this and we're going to move on. There has been, according to to an investigation conducted by The Telegraph, a plan put forward by a group in Britain called Palestine Action, planning a series of assaults on RAF bases throughout the UK. All of them are actually listed here. How do they know this? The revelation comes after undercover reporters joined one of the group's virtual meetings, and during the meeting, which was secretly recorded by the reporters, members discussed future targets following a recent incident where aircraft were damaged during a break-in at RAF Bryce Norton. To show y'all exactly what happened, at RAF Bryce Norton, a couple of people that were a part of the Palestine Action Group broke into the airbase, ran up to a Voyager, which is a refitted Airbus A330 that's an air tanker, or a strategic air tanker, and actually sprayed some sort of paint or some sort of solution into the jet engines. This pretty much ruins them. You have to pretty much take the entire engine apart and rebuild it. So this means that this entire aerial tanker is out of action at the moment until their engines are redone. It can only be described, in my opinion, as an act of sabotage. There's nothing about this at all that falls within any form of illegal protest. I would actually go as far to say that this Palestine Action Group in the UK could possibly be funded or supported or at least encouraged to conduct these actions by the Iranians or some other outside power like the Russians themselves, because this is affecting the combat readiness of the Royal Air Force in the outbreak of conflict either in the Middle East or in Europe. It's starting to degrade the ability of the British Armed Forces to respond. So I'd actually say that at least at the moment, I think that the British government should look into possibly labeling the Palestine Action Group as an extremist, possibly even domestic terrorist group, because these sorts of actions here are not only to the detriment of the military, but the detriment to British national security as a whole. I won't speak on the situation too much because this is a domestic political matter to be dealt with inside the UK, but it is one that is clearly starting to undermine the combat readiness of British armed forces, and it appears that they're planning an even more prolific series of attacks on other British air bases throughout the area. Nevertheless, we are going to be moving on into Ukraine, where we've had a load of news. Starting off with our air defense report, we have been able to hear that last night, 371 drones and missiles were launched by the Russian Federation, with 217 of them directly shot down and another 148 taken out by electronic warfare measures. It was a very successful night for air defense. They actually ended up shooting down a significant number, with only about 20 or so of the missiles and drones making it through. But still, it does appear that some of them did make it through, which is an incredibly unfortunate thing to hear, and it does show that the Ukrainian armed forces are trying their damnedest to defend their skies, but even still, some of them do make it out. Outside of that, we were able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces also retook the town of Oleksandrivka today on the front lines. We were able to see that near to the area of the active Kursk front, which is still under limited control by the Ukrainians at the moment, as the Ukrainians have also started to control Kontrativka, Konstantinivka, and Drivka, and is also currently battling for Unikivka as well. We've also been able to hear ongoing developments outside of that front and in our location unknowns that have been showing some interesting stuff. First, we actually got to see a North Korean 107mm Type 75 MLRS in use with the Russian army. These things are ancient. They're pretty much the North Korean version of the Nebelwerfer. And it's a little bit interesting to see that the Russians are lacking so much MLRS, or at least rocket artillery, that they're starting to use the North Korean Hwacha to try and get some sort of artillery out there. It's pretty bizarre, I'm not going to lie. And it is once again showing us the Russians are in dire straits. Outside of that, we also got to see some anti-drone training being conducted by the Ukrainians in this clip. And it's actually interesting to see the kind of simulator they built. So here's the video. When you see them rolling them along in a cart, which is supposed to simulate, I guess, the bed of a truck. And then they get targets, which appear to be some sort of a fake drone on a line that they're supposed to shoot at. Actually, it's a gong, actually. It's a gong on a line, and they're supposed to shoot at it to simulate a drone flying around a truck. That's actually pretty...
That's actually pretty cool, actually. Like, I guess that is pretty realistic. I guess the only problem is, though, like, the guy was going backwards. It's like, I don't think they were reversing the truck, like, where the pickup bed's, like, going in backwards like that. But, yeah, that's pretty cool, though. Like, it's actually a pretty good system.
I guess in a way, when it goes forward towards the target, it's supposed to be simulating maybe, like the drone coming towards you instead. Maybe that might actually be the reason. But still, really interesting stuff. Really neat sort of a training system, and pretty creative considering the lack of funding that the Ukrainian military has. You know, the Ukrainian nation isn't exactly a wealthy one. But we were able to see the Russian casualty report as well for the day, and it was quite high. We were able to see
the
that
Bobcat today.
one Bobcat skid steer was lost. Finally another one has been lost. And according to Ms. Decent, here are the records. Low numbers are similar to those of spring of 2024. In correction, there is 0 special equipment that was lost today, so scratch the Bobcat. No Bobcats were lost today, but the total is 3,921, which is correct. And we are perfectly okay with that, Ms. Decent. No reason for apologies. But beyond that, we have been able to hear that 970 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 4 APCs, 89 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 13 artillery pieces, 87 drones, and no Bobcat skid steers. Today was still pretty decent, not the highest losses we've seen ever, but still not too bad. Outside of that, and on the active front lines, we were able to see the Russian supply situation near the Rubizhny, as we were able to see a Russian bike transport unit having some troubles getting back on the road. Here's the clip of them in their little quagmire.
Тут пизда просто дорога ебаная.
When you see that some of the bikes have flipped. Boy.
Сука. Пизда.
You see him lifting the bike back up, and this guy fell on the ground.
Да тут пиздец, говорят, все падают, блядь.
And that's the end of the clip, but still quite interesting to see. Moving on from that, and on down the line and towards the area of the Konstantinivka front, as it's now being called, we were able to see the Ukrainian soldiers of the Lyut National Police were able to take prisoners near Yablunivka, which is in the Konstantinivka front. We can actually see here one of the Russian soldiers that have been taken prisoner right there. And we see another one down there on the ground. And we now see them giving their intro. Of course, it's the Ukrainian police. The Ukrainian police are actually active on the front, from what we know at this point, all the way from the Konstantinivka front down to Touretsk. It's almost in the same area for the large part at this point, but it is important to note the actual range of combat that the Ukrainian police are involved in. Moving on from this, however, and outside of this clip, because largely the rest of it is just talking to the prisoners, we also were able to see a drone showing what is left of the city of Touretsk while the heavy fighting was still raging in the city. And of course, there's been a large amount of damage. Both sides have been shelling the city horrifically, and also mining some of the buildings with their Petar crews, like the Ukrainians have been using, which has caused a significant amount of destruction. There is always a bit of a silver lining to this extreme destruction, like we're seeing right here, in the fact that it's showing that the Ukrainian resistance was so strong that the city had to practically be reduced to rubble by both sides for there to be any sort of a change to that front. Meanwhile, in the Pokrovsk front, we also got to see a very rare, this is actually incredibly interesting here, an incredibly rare M1991 MLRS being destroyed. This is actually the first time in the war that we've been able to confirm on video and picture evidence any North Korean MLRS that is actually motorized on its own being destroyed. This is also showing that North Korean arms support is going far larger and farther than we've ever at least believed before. But there is the North Korean MLRS. It is literally a North Korean MLRS. It's actually shocking to see this. And the Ukrainians still ended up blowing it up all the same. Oh my God. Did you see that, Matthew?
Let's see that one more time.
The drone hit, and it hit a rocket ever so perfectly that it actually detonated the solid propellant, and the rocket went flying right through the cab and right out the windshield. Watch this very quickly. You'll see it here. Oh my God.
Oh, wow. Look at that. That thing literally shredded the cab, by the way. Also, let me try to enlarge out my screen. I'm trying to get a look at the front of that truck real quick. Okay, play the video some more. Let's see the front of it.
So there it is again. Oh my God.
Oh, dang. Man, just absolutely like shredded the metal and everything in the front of the truck. That's wild.
So I'm assuming the crew's dead now because that MLRS rocket went clean through. And if you look, the propellant, oh, actually it shows a replay here. The propellant clearly burned everything inside of the cab. So I think the crew can largely be confirmed to be dead after that happened.
I think they could just be like maybe lightly burned.
I think what they call it, Matthew, is they call it seared, if the term is correct.
Bombay.
Oh, actually, no, one guy did get out, along with the second. It looked like they had no clothes.
Whoa. What the world? They actually made it through. I was just joking, being sarcastic, by the way. I thought they were finished.
I thought they were as well, but they actually ended up getting out, which is a little bit crazy. But we got to see it hit again later, and it appears to have gone nuclear.
I didn't think that was survivable. That's kind of surprising, actually.
Well, if you notice, it blew all their clothes off. Like, they literally climbed out of the cab, like, practically naked. So,
Instant strippers.
yeah, well, yeah, I guess that's a whole new realm of stripper right there. But moving on from that and down towards the area of the Staromanivka front, or really the Velika Novoselka village chain, we also got to see that the Ukrainians ended up conducting a very rare attack today near to Tokmak with the 65th Ronin, where they attacked and destroyed a Russian train with drones. This is actually quite rare to see, at least on footage. We usually see that this sort of stuff is conducted by partisan activity behind the lines.
They're whipping out those motion effects.
And we see here the town of Tokmak. And we see them getting the drone lined up to try and find their target, which is a freight train moving through the area. And we can see that they've now found it. And the drone is coming on in. It actually looks like this train may be carrying military equipment, although the footage is really grainy and it's really hard to tell at the moment.
This is like that train heist that we were told about a while back. This is like the closest thing to, like, I guess you could say reality.
Man, it's the railway hijinks. Jinkies. And here comes the drone, and it looks like it hit one of the... Oh, actually, we couldn't tell. It looked like it hit one of the power units. Couldn't tell, but still, it looks like they were able to possibly confirm a hit. Outside of that, we also were able to see the command posts within the Zaporizhia front were also getting hit with the airstrikes today. And we're going to be muting the Harlem Shake music. But we can see here the outposts that are about to be hit. The stock footage of the MiG-29 dropping the bombs. That's not the actual MiG-29 that dropped the bombs, by the way. They just edit that in. But here comes the hits. And there's one hit, and here comes the second. And here comes the third. And it appears that both of the command posts were hit directly with the bombs and were most likely destroyed as a result. That's the end of those clips, but still, very nice to see the Ukrainians were continuing to hit those positions. Outside of that, we were able to see footage, or pictures more so, coming out of Mariupol, showing a lot of different Russian military units with different campaign or frontline markings moving into the area. This is suggesting that they are going to be conducting a new offensive in the Zaporizhia front at some point in the future, because there is enough offensive markers on all of these vehicles of different types, showing that they're being pulled from literally every front, the Kherson front, the Sumy front, the Kharkiv front, so on and so forth, that they have to be preparing for a new offensive because units are coming in from all over through Mariupol and are beginning to head into the Zaporizhia region as a whole. So we may be seeing that a new Russian summer offensive will be conducted in Zaporizhia here soon. We expect the Ukrainian defenses will get pushed back a little bit, at least initially, but will generally hold. That's usually the way Russian offensives happen these days. It's really how all offensives from both sides happen nowadays, is that the Ukrainians never were able to make any ground, the Russians really aren't able to make any ground, and it generally ends up becoming a pretty bloody battle that ends up being a stalemate. But with that, we are going to be moving on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine here on day 1220 of the war. So without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Дорогі українці, українки, сьогодні багато всього за день провів ставку, саме технологічний компонент, технологічну ставку. Були детальні доповіді щодо дронів усіх питань. Це фінанси, виробництво, необхідні регуляторні спрощення. Ключова ціль – виробляти максимум. І саме таких типів дронів, які потрібні на передовій і для захисту міст, а також з врахуванням розвитку технологій ворога. Були на ставці доповіді військового командування, Міністерства оборони України, також Мінстратегпрому, детальна доповідь нашої розвідки щодо технологічних планів, щодо намірів Росії. Масштабуємо український потенціал, зокрема по перехоплювачах. Я дав кілька спеціальних доручень, поки без деталей. Але результат має бути очевидний. Збільшення виробництва в Україні та для України. Всі можливості бізнесу, всі можливості державним виробникам. Головне, щоб масштаб нашого виробництва і швидкість розвитку дронів були реально адекватними умовам війни. Також провів сьогодні нараду з нашими дипломатами. Міністерство закордонних справ, віце-прем'єрка з питань європейської та євроатлантичної інтеграції, також була команда Офісу. Зараз були дуже насичені тижні наших зустрічей в Європі. Також в Канаді, на саміті Великої Сімки. Є домовленості щодо оборонних пакетів та спільного виробництва. Британія, Нідерланди, Канада, інші наші партнери. Є речі, які можемо зробити разом з Америкою. Багато домовленостей з Францією та Німеччиною. Все треба чітко реалізувати. І по спільному виробництву дронів та інвестиціям, і по іншим нашим проєктам далекобійності, в тому числі щодо ракет. Сьогодні ж є рішення максимально прискоритись у санкційному тиску на Росію. Я хочу подякувати нашим партнерам, які готують вже 18-й пакет санкцій в Європі. Були нові санкційні кроки Британії та Канади. Працюємо по санкціях з усіма країнами Сімки і також з іншими найбільш вагомими світовими юрисдикціями. Всі необхідні санкції світу проти Росії мають бути повністю реалізовані. І у нас, в українській юрисдикції. Так само українські санкції проти всіх, хто допомагає Росії, проти всіх, хто тримає чи набуває бізнес-активи на тимчасово окупованій території і фактично спонсорує окупацію. Українські санкції проти таких осіб теж мають бути повністю реалізовані в ключових юрисдикціях. Відповідальність Росії за війну і наш санкційний тиск мають працювати на 100% і мають не дозволяти Росії та її дружкам адаптуватися. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає. Дякую всім, хто працює на Україну. Слава Україні!
And
Hiram Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and that is going to be moving us on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. And boy howdy, what a fun time that is. We absolutely love to get to talk to each and every one of y'all, and hopefully we'll be able to get to talk to as many of y'all as we can tonight. I do have to give a huge thanks and shout out to the 13,000 people who were here at the peak tonight, and the 83,000 people who have watched so far. This stream has certainly not been the blockbuster newsbreaker like other days have been, but still, it's not, it's not like this new war that's happening right now at the moment. Luckily, we're just kind of getting back into the normal swing of things, at least for now. But it does appear that at the moment, we will be able to get on into some questions and get to chit-chat with all of y'all and get to talk about all the crazy things that have been going on recently. And also, by the way, folks, if you would like to subscribe, please do. We're actually getting really close to hitting 471,000 subscribers and making ourselves a little bit closer to the march to 500,000, which hopefully we'll be able to hit here during the middle part of this year. It'd be really neat to see us surpass 500,000 subscribers, considering that it wasn't too long ago that we were at about 250,000. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best we can, at least at the moment right now. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So for some reason, my headphones are having a little bit of a glitch. So I'm going to have to try to figure that out here in a minute. I can't even hear myself speaking right now because they've gone into voice canceling mode for some reason. So it's a little bit trippy talking. I'm not going to lie. But anyways, jumping into our final super chat segment of the night. This one goes to Poco Loco, who puts in a $50 donation. Thank you very much, Poco, for that $50 support. He said, are the North Koreans still in Russia on the front lines?
From what we know, the North Koreans are not still in Russia on the front lines. They actually have been pulled off of the front for now. That does not mean that they're out of Russia, however. We do understand that the North Korean Expeditionary Force is still inside the Russian Federation's western regions, mostly within the central or southern military district. It's just that we haven't heard of them actively being engaged in the fighting or the combat here recently. However, their equipment clearly is, such as the Type M1991 MLRS that we just saw destroyed near to the area of Seladove. So with that in mind, we can generally confirm that while their equipment is on the line and operating, we are not able to confirm that the North Koreans are on the line. It appears they've been pulled back and that they are waiting for additional reinforcements or fortification by another North Korean regiment that'll be joining the fighting here soon, and then they'll be getting right back into the thick of things, at least from what we're understanding from our information at the moment. So that seems to be the running trend at the moment, Poco Loco, is that the North Koreans are in Western Russia, but they're not actively on the front lines right now. But I have a feeling that those North Koreans are probably never going to be coming back, because too many of them have seen the outside world. And although Russia is a hellhole, Russia looks like paradise compared to North Korea. So I have a feeling that a lot of those people will not be returning. They will most likely be left to stay in Russia at the end of the conflict. Who knows? But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Poco Loco, who are supporting this channel and helping us to keep it rolling, we wouldn't be able to do this right now tonight. So a massive thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right. Thankfully, I got my headphones fixed. In case you are curious what I'm talking about there, I actually use AirPods Max ever since I've been doing the streams. That way I can hear myself talk through the headphones. There's a thing called transparency mode where I can actually hear myself talking. So that way I can kind of modulate how loud I am on the mic and how loud I am in the studio here. So for some reason, it went into voice canceling mode. So it was literally actively canceling out my voice when I was talking, and I couldn't hear anything I was saying. So it was like I was deaf, and I was talking and couldn't even figure out if I was saying things properly. So that was a little bit trippy there for a second, but luckily it is fixed. So now moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Damian Crossi, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Damiano, for that support. He said, "Hello, everybody, and I'm on a road trip to Ukraine, and can I have a Patriot battery to haul with my 1-liter engine European car? And I'm just kidding, but I'm going for real."
Hey, and I hope you stay safe in Ukraine. Really cool to hear that you're on a road trip there, and I hope that things continue to go well for you and that you stay safe. That's a very important thing these days. But beyond that, pretty good joke. And I also got to say that it's a great thing to know that folks are continuing to travel to Ukraine. We do have amazing folks that are here that are a part of the Lee Spring Army that have been to Ukraine multiple times before, like BC Skyman and Yuri, who have actually been to Ukraine in the past before, delivering hemostatic bandages for the Lee Spring Army as a whole, which was an incredibly impressive thing to see. It was really cool. But beyond that, I've got to say a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running right now. So a huge thank you to you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to In Beautiful Tucson, who puts in a $20 donation as well. And thank you very much, In Beautiful Tucson, for that $20 support. They said, "Can you show the North Korean video made of snow for a good time laugh?" And thank you, guys.
We can actually. Why not? I mean, like that would be North Korea propaganda. This is what life is like in America. Here we go. I found it. Man, I freaking love this. Let's go take a look at this. So here it is, folks. This is the video.
How Americans live today. Dramatic music. This is how Americans live today, drinking coffee made from snow and living in tents and buying guns to kill each other, especially children.
I just don't know what was up with this whole video.
Living in tents.
And bong guns.
I think the guy was like eating the microphone basically. So how does it come through like that?
He said, "Drinking coffee made of snow and bong guns to kill each other."
Especially children.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell? It's like, why in the world do they have to add in the especially children part? It's like, if everyone's getting shot as a kid, who's living to be an adult to buy the guns? You know, like, that's my question. But anyways.
Some people complain about the guns.
Some people just happen to complain about them. You know, not like a big thing. They're just kind of like, oh man, these guns, they're like this big annoyance kind of a deal.
Man, he's getting political there. That's getting into dangerous territory.
Dude. Oh,
Living on the streets of modern-day America.
Also, why does the music just sound like they found Taj Mahal? Like, why in the world did the crescendo right there?
Sounds like the closing scene to Snow White.
Honestly, it kind of does.
These trees are full of snow. You'll see that there are no birds. They've been eaten by the people who live in these tents and corridors.
I like how they said tents, and then they had to clarify corridors as well, because this is clearly a homeless shelter. Like they were about to go with the whole tent thing until they got the video of the homeless shelter.
This man awaits heroin.
He's just casually waiting for it, by the way.
He said it's so elegant, too. He said, this man awaits drugs. It's like, oh, what is he like? Is it like Uber or something? I go, yeah, I don't think North Korea has that.
Bro pointed out the hot dog man and said, this man awaits. this man awaits cocaine. Oh my god.
Their houses blow down very easily.
Like we weren't just hit with a damn hurricane when they filmed that. Like it's like, oh, I'm sorry, North Korea doesn't deal with typhoons even. Sorry that we deal with those. You know, sometimes it's a little bit of a tough thing to build buildings that are able to resist multi-100-mile-per-hour winds that are consistently hitting them for hours. You know, like that's something that might be an issue.
And they have to live in tents like these. This man will show us his tent with pride. He points to his items, but the camera notices his roof has fallen.
Okay, hold up. My question is, what tent has wooden rafters that clearly are showing that it's a house?
I was about to say the same thing. I said, what kind of tent's got a roof on it like this? I thought a tent was like canvas or something. This is not canvas. This is literally a whole structure.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell are they even talking about? This guy's clearly in a building somewhere. But anyways.
Down. This is common in modern-day America. The American Red Cross supplies curtains and walls from material from North Korea.
They had to add that in. Yes. Yeah, I really expect that North Korea is the home of prefab manufacturing in the world. You know, like prefabricated charges that get you put in the labor camps, maybe, but you know, not much more.
Here's the real question. Here's the real question. If it's from North Korea, then why does it say American Red Cross on it? If it's from North Korea, wouldn't it say Korean Red Cross?
Yeah, exactly, man. It's like that is something stupid right there. He's like, this is like not this guy, but the North Korean propagandist. These walls and tents are provided by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It's like, if North Korea hated America so bad, why are they providing all the humanitarian aid?
Yeah, exactly. And also, why are they labeling it as American aid that they're sending? Why would they do that?
I don't even know. But also, man, you know, he hasn't answered the question yet. Why in the world are these birds on this tree? And if so, when are they going to be eaten?
Again, there are no birds in the trees apart from these, which will be eaten on Tuesday.
Oh, there we go. We got the answer to that. So these are the only birds left in America, and they'll all be eaten on Tuesday. For some reason, that's a tentative date. Like, they're not going to be eaten today. We're saving those because we're awaiting heroin today. We'll eat those on Tuesday.
They are yummy.
Oh, that's good enough.
So apparently we live like shit, but the birds are gourmet meals by Gordon Ramsay himself. If you like punch one open, maybe, you know, it's like, I don't even. Anyways.
You can also eat the snow, of which there is plenty.
I like how they love to emphasize the snow, dude. Like, all of America is covered in snow. Like, I bet you, dude, North Koreans think that America as a country is a frozen wasteland of ice and snow.
I'll tell you what, I'm just interested by the whole like thing about like it's plenty. There's plenty of snow. There's plenty of tents. It's like, well, I mean, North Koreans don't even have tents. So, I mean, I think that's an upgrade.
Yeah, it's like dude, the North Korean propaganda video, like, Americans live in tents as opposed to us, as we live in gulags with roofs and work. You know, it's like I guess maybe that's what they're looking for. I don't know.
In the United States, these people lie huddled together with their dead friends in blue body bags, drinking coffee cups full of local snow.
So it's coffee. So apparently you can just melt the snow and it naturally turns into coffee. Like, where are they getting the ground coffee beans to make the snow water into coffee? Who the hell knows? Apparently you just melt the snow and it turns into coffee. Honestly, man, this is kind of making America sound like a wonderland. I mean, you sit near your dead friends in the body bags, you just melt in snow, it turns into coffee magically. The North Koreans provide you with tents and walls. I mean, like, honestly, it doesn't sound that bad. I bet you it couldn't get any worse. I bet you it could only get worse if someone was sitting on an advertisement of expensive Dell computers that they just couldn't afford. Like, I think that's probably what's coming.
And also, I like the fact that they're showing two people that aren't even huddled up like they were describing. And it's like, these people right here are like kitted out. Like, what one guy looks like he's wearing Canada Goose. It's like, these guys right here aren't looking poor on the side of the bench right here. They're like, they're wearing some proper like winter clothes and stuff. Dude. And also, it's like, what kind of body's in that bag right there? That was a big person in that bag.
Yeah, man. I mean, this guy must have been like, hell, I don't even know. Must have been Kim Jong-un himself that's in that bag with how big it is. I mean, that thing is freaking massive. Also, this guy is so well insulated, dude. He's got his legs spread. Like, he's not even cold. He's comfortable. He's just chilling out here.
They are very good friends.
They had that.
They are together in adversity.
Well, that's good to know, at least, that they're together in adversity. That's always important to know. That at least in America, while everyone's buying guns to kill each other, you can actually have friends in adversity. That's something that a lot of people can't even brag about here in Alabama.
In other parts of America, often
I don't even know, honestly.
That doesn't even look like America. That's not even an American bus right there or anything.
I think that... Wait a minute.
Is
Oh, hell no. That is a trolley bus, dude. We do not have trolley buses. Hell no, we don't. Where in the hell could this even be, dude? This is
it looks Soviet.
It has to be Soviet because they were the big ones for the trolley buses. Let me go pull this up. Maybe we did have a trolley bus at some point. Trolley buses.
It's never looked that gloomy anywhere in America in America's history.
So here are some trolley buses. Let's see if we can... Okay, so apparently there were trolley buses in America at a time. So these do exist. By the way, folks, trolley buses are just buses that get their power from an overhead line. So they're electric buses. In case you all didn't know, those did exist for a time. They're very prolific in former Soviet countries and a lot of communist states. But here in America, they never really caught on. But we had some. Oh, what's this? There was actually one in Birmingham that ran from 1947 to 1958. Oh, that's interesting. But anyways, let's see. Not really a lot of models, apparently. At least from what I can tell. This doesn't look like America, though. Like, it just doesn't. This, honestly, you know, if I had to take a shot at where this was, this might actually be someplace like Romania, or something like that, because it kind of looks like Romania would have back in the day.
It kind of does.
But once again, I'm not really a geoguesser for old footage like this, but...
In other parts of America, often disguised as foreign countries in Europe.
Oh, there we go. There was the truth.
Often disguised as foreign countries. And it's like, yeah, because this is Eastern Europe. This is not America.
People live the same terrible life.
Okay, this guy is actually suspicious. I don't know what he's up to.
That's Charles Manson.
Bro, that might actually be. Also, why in the world is he trying to, like, stick his hands down the front of his pants? Like, what's up with this guy? What is he doing? Like, they actually found a key suspect. Apparently somewhere in Eastern Europe, I'm guessing. But who the hell is he?
This guy's about to break out in the whole monologue in a minute. I'm sharper than a straight razor if you get too close. He's not going to full Charles Manson mode.
Man, a former Republican candidate.
Oh, he was a former Republican. That makes sense. Like, you know, North Koreans obviously know about Republicans and Democrats. I mean, they have to make a political jab in North Korea. I don't know why. Like, also, by the way, I'm not saying that, you know, like trying to, like, make a jab at Republicans, by the way. I'm trying to make a jab at who the hell in North Korea would even know what the Republican or Democrat Party even is? Like, what in the world? Where in the world would that even make sense? Like, if you told someone in America about, like, Britain, for example, oh, he must be a member of the Labour Party. No one in America would even know what the hell the Labour Party is. Most people wouldn't, at least. Or better yet, no one would know what the Unity Party in Poland was. Like, no one would know. Like, that's such an obscure reference for the target demographic. It's like, who the hell even knows what that means? I don't even know. But anyways.
Oregon.
Oh, he was in Oregon. Okay, well.
Is now having to get coffee made of snow from these trucks.
200만 명이 사는 수도에는 약 5천 명의 지붕.
Many Americans have to live like this daily and are entitled to 1 cup most days.
그들은 시내
Also,
주변을
Informer,
돌아.
I don't mean to interrupt our funny here, but we actually, believe it or not, I was not expecting this. We actually have breaking news that's coming out right this second. So let me get this pulled up over here on my main screen to try to get a look at it real quick. So right now, we are getting word that apparently missiles have been fired at Israel. I'm trying to do some quick gathering of intel here real quick. We're being told that the Israeli Defense Forces have detected missile launches targeting multiple areas in Israel. And the Home Front Command urges residents in those locations to stay near shelters and go inside immediately when the alerts sound. Right now, it sounds like central Negev is the main target, also southern and western Negev, the Dead Sea, and also many other areas as well. So it looks like we're seeing some missile launches here. It appears to be most likely from Yemen, most likely launched by the Houthis right this second. So it looks like the Houthis are striking right now. So this is one of the first ones we've seen in a minute from Yemen.
Also, Matthew, can you reconnect your call? In the meantime, it's starting to break up really badly. But it does appear at the moment we are hearing about incoming missile attacks in the area of southern Israel. It appears that, according to the information we have at the moment, these are most likely ballistic missiles fired from the Yemeni Houthis within western Yemen, but it is still showing that proxy forces affiliated, funded, and operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are continuing to conduct attacks, specifically around the Be'er-Sheva area. We can see that these air alerts extend all the way out to Dimona, near to the Negev Nuclear Research Facility in the Negev Desert, and also go as far northeast as Kiryat Gat. But it does appear quite obvious that the main target of this attack appears to be the Be'er-Sheva area. So we will be waiting to see what kind of developments are happening there, at least at the moment. But it does seem as though we are hearing of an incoming attack right now. We will most likely see some interceptor action, but usually Yemeni Houthi launches of ballistic missiles are fairly small, usually comprised of only a handful of missiles at a time. They don't have a large missile launch ability. So these will most likely be dealt with and shot down fairly efficiently, at least by the air defense that's in the local area. But still, a fairly major development to hear, and we will be waiting for more additional information at the moment. And so with that, in the meantime, we will get back to this video as we're still waiting for more news coming out about that ongoing attack. And also, Matthew, can you give us a little audio test really quickly?
Yeah, am I coming through loud and clear now, or am I still lagging?
It sounds like you're fine. It was like this weird thing with your audio where you would talk like this, and it kind of sounded like RFK Jr. And I was like, oh, it's like it sounds like we're running into some issues. But anyways, back to this clip. In the meantime,
The weather is freezing, but the hot snow tastes nice. That man's taking the blankets while they're looking.
what the hell?
He's just snitching too.
That man's taking the blankets while they're looking.
The
You
weather
sound
is
concerned
freezing.
about that.
Bruh, and it's like he didn't even take anything from anyone. He was carrying that the whole time.
But the hot snow tastes nice. That man's taking the blankets while they're looking. They are very grateful to their government for these handouts.
Like the entire
handout.
communist system doesn't revolve around government handouts. That's literally all you
Exactly.
get in communism is government handouts. It's like literally your pay is a government handout in a communist system. What the hell is he talking about?
로마니아에서는 겨울 동안에
Yummy.
약 300명의
Also, who the hell's eating coffee made of snow with a spoon? Like, who the hell goes, yes, I'll have my coffee, I'll spoon feed it to myself in my mouth. Like, no one does that. You drink coffee out of a cup like a human.
Also, why is the snow so thick? Look at it. Look at the consistency of that snow.
Is that a snow noodle? Is that a noodle made of snow right there, Matthew? That doesn't look like coffee to me.
That doesn't look like coffee. And who eats coffee with a spoon?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
굶주림, 그로 인한 각종 질병으로 목숨을 잃는다.
They enjoy it immensely.
마자리에서도 집 없는
Meantime,
사람들이
in the
Meantime, in the back rooms, like wherever the hell this was filmed, it's literally the largest liminal space I've ever seen. Where the hell would that even be? Like, I don't even know what building that is.
Like a convention center or something in hell.
Yeah, dude, this looks like purgatory, honestly. Like, whoever did build this building did a bad job designing it.
major offices, factories and railway stations, people sit around under expensive adverts for Dell computers.
집 없는 사람들을 위한
Dude, they hit rock bottom, man. Sitting near an expensive advert for Dell computers could not compare. It's unfortunate.
Man, this was a
snow.
good time right here. They were advertising the Intel i7 for the Inspiron. That was a crazy time there. Look at that, 4 gigs of RAM. This is old school.
Yeah, this is like ancient, honestly.
Drinking snow from plastic cups. People pass by, not caring, for they are all in the same situation.
As someone literally comes out of a store right behind the cameraman with a giant bag full of stuff that they just bought. But no, they're all drinking coffee made of snow, folks. You didn't see that person buy some clothes right there. They're all drinking coffee made of snow.
These telephones no longer work. There is no one to call.
There is no hope. There's no one to call. It's like, bro, it's like just putting out the doom. Like, it's like the apocalypse out here in America, apparently.
Some lucky people are allowed beds and floors indoors like this. This is how they live in modern-day America, huddled together, the poor, the cold, the lonely, and the homosexual.
What was up with the jab at the end right there? Like, that was never included in anything. They just throw that up there at the end? What the hell was the point? I didn't even get it.
The North Korean camera crew awoke this guy who was very cold and gave him some North Korean coffee and a blanket. Meantime, these people queued up for handouts from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and were each given a cake.
Okay.
Man, the North Koreans are like, you know how our coffee tastes so good? You know the secret ingredient? And they're like, what? Toxic sludge.
Dude, it's like, man, you know what makes North Korean coffee taste better? What? The sweat of the tortured. Here you go. It's like, hey, that makes it way better. It's a little salty, but I like it. But beyond that, it's an absolutely goofy propaganda clip. It's a great one, though, because there's so many, like, quotable lines from that thing that we just remember all the time. Because we still talk about behind the scenes drinking coffee made of snow and a whole bunch of other things because it's just hilarious. Like the birds, which will be eaten on Tuesday. You know, that whole sort of thing. Honestly, I'm not going to lie, man. That is honestly how really political people view America, like, depending on what side you're from. Like, if you're leaning more towards the right, they view the cities like that. If you're being leaning more towards the left, they view the countryside like that. So I guess, that could kind of apply depending on what lens you're looking at it through. But still, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you for allowing us a little bit of time in beautiful Tucson to be able to show that great propaganda clip because it is one of great comedic value and importance. So massive thanks to you so much once again. And I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I hope you all enjoy your cake and coffee and blankets that were provided to you by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And I hope you enjoyed that greatly. And Matthew, let's get another one.
All right, so real quick, let's jump back into some breaking news right this second. So we have gotten confirmation from Israel that this missile was launched from Yemen. Right now, it's unclear exactly how many missiles have been launched, but it appears to be a small number, and Israel's saying their air defenses are activated trying to shoot these down. Also, we're seeing that apparently sirens are also going off in the Beersheba area of southern Israel and the West Bank, and also going off in the Negev area, central, southern, and western Negev, where apparently there is a nuclear site inside of Israel. So it appears to be, once again, like we mentioned, the Houthis are acting up, and we're trying to see exactly how many missiles have been fired, but it appears to be most likely a small volley of them, if not maybe less than 5 perhaps. So we're trying to wait and see here. We'll see. We're being told by the IDF the initial details are under review right now. So we'll be waiting to see what happens with that. We'll probably have the information here in a moment to let y'all know what's happening inside of Israel. But with that, we're now moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Steve T, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Steve, for that support. He said, if you were going on a date, what activity would you do? Gun range, bowling, dog park, forest walk, comedy show, or something else? And keep up with the news and the entertainment.
I probably wouldn't do a gun range first. That's probably not a good idea for a first date, at least in my opinion. I'm big on guns, like guns, appreciate them, love shooting them. First date idea, not really that great of one. I would say that generally just going to a restaurant or like a walk in the park or something like that, probably a decent idea. Or going to the movies. Those sorts of the ideas are a good idea for a first date. Going to a gun range though, I would say that's generally like a 4th or 5th date kind of an idea, because generally you've gotta draw them in with your charm before you hit them with the nerd. Like you can't hit them with trains and guns up front. You kind of got to hit them with that a little bit later. So fifth date or so. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. A big thanks to you so much for the support, Steve D. I hope I did answer that question well. And also, thank you for enjoying the news and the entertainment. We try and provide a great deal of news, but we do know and appreciate that a lot of people get a decent amount of entertainment value out of the news as well. Sometimes it's just comedic what's coming out of the news. We can't help but strike a jab at it, at least in my opinion. And so, big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that it does address that the best we can, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. Hello? 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 Oh no. Oh, nine. I've lost him.
Hello?
Oh, hello there. Does your microphone shoot out? What's going on here?
No, it's the internet. I think we might have momentarily gone down there. At least I did.
I didn't. I was on ads the entire time. I think it was just
Oh,
yours.
good for you. But it looks like I went down.
What the hell's going on up there? Like, what's going on? Bro, I think it's the lightning outside, maybe. Who knows? But with that, we are
the
on.
weather, probably.
Man, the weather outside is frightful, and we have no fire inside. That's delightful. We're drinking coffee made of snow. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, we're having like some really like foul weather here over the last little bit. So I think that's probably what it is. It's like raining heavily and it's like a flash flood warning out there. So I think it's messing with our internet a bit, or at least mine. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to Paul Weekly, and he put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Paul, for that support. He said, thank you for the continued coverage of real global news.
Hey, and I thank you greatly for appreciating our continued coverage of real global news, Paul Weekly. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it rolling, to be able to do that weekly coverage of news. And we thank you all greatly for enjoying this channel enough to support it and help it to keep on running so we can cover all of the news going on around the world whenever it's going on. And I gotta say, that we're also greatly appreciative that so many people who have been watching our news coverage for years stick with us through thick and thin. And it's great to know that we were able to finally get back to covering what we usually cover, our bread and butter of a swath of global events, including the war in Ukraine, pretty much on a cycle. And we weren't having to go breaking news streams back to back every day for the Iran-Israel conflict, which while it was crazy, and it certainly was something, it's good to know that we were able to get back into the swing of things. So a big thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to, wait, what? Who puts in a $20 donation? And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. They said, anything planned for the 500,000 subscribers?
We generally actually don't have usually any big plans for when we surpass big subscriber numbers or amounts. We generally just kind of say, hey, look, we hit it, and then we keep going. I don't know what we could do if we hit 500,000. I also saw some people asking about how YouTube works. Are you congratulated for hitting 500,000 or a million? Or what happens when you hit 500,000? Does YouTube do anything special? The answer to all of that's generally no. 500,000 subscribers is a huge milestone for pretty much every YouTube channel. It's the halfway mark between nothing and a million. But for some reason, YouTube does not have anything to celebrate 500,000. They celebrate subscriber milestones at 100,000, 1 million, and then 10 million. And then for the very few channels that ever hit it, they also have one for 100 million. But they do not have any at all for 500,000. And we also don't also YouTube doesn't give out like paid bonuses or anything for hitting certain subscriber amounts either. So there's literally no like celebration on YouTube's end for us hitting 500K. But as far as us hitting 500K, we generally just view that as a lot of people really do appreciate our news coverage, and we're always honored and greatly appreciative of that. And then we thank everyone for subscribing and joining, but we generally don't do anything special or anything that's out of the way, at least these days. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address your question well. But sadly, wait, what? I don't think we've had anything down the pipe that's planned, because to be entirely honest, we didn't even expect that we were going to be this close to 500K this quick. It was just a few weeks ago, actually it was only 2 weeks ago, that we were at 360,000 subscribers, and now we're at 470,000. So we didn't even think we would be getting this close to 500,000. To have that as something we'd have to to think about. So I was just like, dang, I was like, that is crazy. We gained 110 or 120,000 subscribers over the past 2 weeks. So now we kind of got to think, like, if we are going to do anything for 500K, because it's not been anything on our plate here recently at all until right now. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we'll see. Right now, it's nothing, but we might come up with something because it's fast approaching at this point. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, for everybody asking about the news about Israel, just to get everybody caught up to date with it, we did get the reports that missiles were launched from Yemen. Apparently, it was such a small number that the event must be already over because we're not getting any more news about it. It looks like it was either shot down or they didn't make it to their targets. Suggesting it was a very, very small amount of missiles that was launched from Yemen. So it looks like it was nothing really much to say. But of course, this was a brand new launch by the Houthis, apparently, but nothing much to report. And it wasn't a big attack whatsoever. So I guess maybe a testing of defenses or just testing to see what the response is going to be, most likely. But Enforcer, what say you?
It sounds interesting. It doesn't, I'll be honest with y'all, it doesn't sound like a big thing. We've seen this happen a gazillion times, where the Houthis will fire off a small volley of missiles. They all get shot down. None of them ever hit. So not to play it down into a nothing burger, but generally we've seen this enough times. This is generally a smaller passing event on most days. So with that in mind, they'll most likely shoot them all down. It'll end up being a non-story for the large part, because this is typical Houthi activities. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least from what I know at the moment, and also off of the record that we have from the past. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next support goes to Just Chillin'. He throws in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Just Chillin', as well for that support, and we do appreciate that very much. And thank you very much, Just Chillin', for that support. We do appreciate that. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks for the support, Just Chillin'. We thank you massively for enjoying this channel and helping it to keep on running. And I got to thank you incredibly for continuing to support this channel and helping it to keep rolling. It is folks like you who have made this thing possible and help us to keep this thing rolling day in and day out. And if it wasn't for folks like you who supported this channel and helped it to keep running, we simply would not be able to make this thing possible and make it a reality to cover news from around the world every single day that is in support of American and Western interests. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, I see people bringing up all kinds of stuff about the 500K celebration thing. What about this? What about for 500K, Matt gets on a plane, he goes to Iran, tries to survive, and comes back and makes a video documentary about it. How about that?
What if, I got a better idea, Matthew. What if at 500,000 subscribers, we started a YouTube food channel and we traveled around the world, and no matter how good or how bad the food actually was that we were tasting, we made everything sound like it was insanely good. Like we could be like, okay, we're eating fire ants coated in honey and covered in Carolina Reaper sauce. Let's take a taste. Oh my God, it's so good. What if we did that? I think that
sounds obnoxious, honestly. That sounds very obnoxious.
Kind of does, honestly. But let's see. What could we do for 500K? A lot of people actually have some really good ideas.
Also, Snow White said, you would not survive in Iran. I'm sorry. Now, honestly, I'll be honest with you. I have a feeling that if I went to a foreign country and anywhere in the Middle East, where there's obviously sleeper cells and even friendly countries, or when anywhere, for example, like China, obviously Russia, or Iran, or anywhere like that, I have a feeling that it might turn into a survival show instead of a nice little YouTube video. It'd probably turn into something quite ugly. You might see like maybe a news article on the TV talking about popular YouTuber gets caught up in Iran and held hostage for money and ransom. It's like, might end up on the nightly news.
I got an idea.
Or they might not even want ransom. They might just be like, well, we don't even want the ransom. We just want to like take them and, be done with them or something. You never know.
I got an idea, Matthew. Why don't I go down to Haiti to go interview barbecue, and you go up to the North Korean border on the Chinese side and ask a North Korean bodyguard when's the barbecue on because you got a fat pig as your leader, and then we'll see who gets killed first. Like we can see who gets put in the camp or something first. Like that could be an idea for 500,000 subscribers, maybe.
I put this pro-American in Iran for 5 hours to see if he can survive, and if he can survive, he gets $1 million.
Dude, that's going to be the next Mr. Beast idea. We're going to get reached out, folks. He's going to airdrop us into Iran and see how long it takes before the IRGC comes down and caps us wherever we are. That's going to be the next one. And if we survive, you know what? Better yet, folks. What if we just went and joined the Squid Game? Maybe that would be a good idea. We could just go join the Squid Game for 500K. But all the jokes aside, folks, getting serious about 500K rather than just joking endlessly about this. I would say I don't really know what we would even do. I see a lot of people saying t-shirts. Sadly, we don't really have any sort of merchandise store infrastructure set up right now. We had to dismantle all of that when moving into Enforcer HQ 2.0. And we generally don't have the space to be able to run a merch store at the moment. But when we do at Enforcer HQ 3.0, and I have a feeling we're probably going to have past 500,000 before we even move into HQ 3.0, that could be a bit of an issue. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
What about this? Because everybody's always curious about it. I'm not sure if it'll be a wise idea because obviously we don't want to give away any of our trade craft over here. Have we run things too much behind the scenes? But we could show like generally like the process to maybe like making a video, perhaps like not giving away like everything we do to get our sources and stuff like that, but just generally like how we do it behind the scenes, or maybe how our stream works. Like maybe like I think I've said this before in the past, so I didn't really pull it off. I can maybe like set up a camera of like my area live stream or something, or maybe even better than that, maybe even running just like one special stream where it's like we show our faces on the live stream one time, just for a one-time thing only on the 500K night, and let that be the only night we do it, just for like a taste of how it would be to have our faces on the screen, like every other YouTuber that wants people to stare at their face while they're talking.
We possibly could. It's just that, folks, I have a general aversion to showing my face. Like it's not that I'm like Quasimodo or anything like that. It's just that it adds a whole layer of extra stuff that we have to focus on. And it distracts me from actually being able to monologue because I have to sit there and think, what do I look like? Because generally, just to let y'all know, I don't smile. I usually just have a very blank expression on my face. And so whenever I'm in front of a camera, I've got to really think about smiling, because if I don't, people will be in the comments like they were the last time we ever did anything live, and they're going to be like, oh, he looks angry, he looks pissed, and I'm not. I'm just doing my thing. But for some reason, I look angry sometimes when I'm just have a blank face. So I was like, all right. I was like, well, that's important to know now. So, you know, I don't know. We'll have to see what we could do, though, because we'll come up with something, because 500,000 is a giant milestone, not only for us as a channel, but for all of y'all as the Least Spring Army. So we do want to come up with something. It's just that we don't know what it is yet.
I got it. I got an idea from Miss Disa. What we could do is we could do a Discord live stage, I think it's called, like where we like can actually talk to the audience, and as many people that can join as possible. I don't know what the limit is on Discord. They could join it. Now, obviously, we couldn't live stream that because if someone jumps in there and says something crazy, we don't want to get banned off of YouTube for someone saying something stupid just to get us banned off of YouTube. So it would be something just on Discord where we could talk to people and give people like a chance to ask questions. Obviously, it would have to be somewhat organized because like if there's thousands of people in there, it can't just be everybody like talking at once. But that would be pretty cool. Actually, that would be pretty neat.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting idea. We could do that. That'd be pretty cool. So yeah, that could be a possibility. That could be a pretty decent option right there, actually. And so with that, I hope we were able to finally get down to the bottom of at least a general idea of what we could do. And also, oh yeah, Fliver said this. The one of the goofiest things people always comment on appearances. You look tired. Yeah, you know, like, and that's something y'all cannot see behind our show, because, you know, not to get too much into the details of behind the scenes. Sometimes we are actually absolutely beat some days when we're running these shows, and it's really hard to tell that when you only have a voice to go off of, because we like overdoing this for years. I can fake energy if I need to. We don't do it often, but I'll be able to fake energy and be able to fake you know, being good when sometimes I'm not. Like, just to be entirely honest, doesn't happen anymore. But back in the day when I was first starting this channel, there were some days, this isn't about Matthew, by the way, that I would absolutely get dressed down and just cussed out to the point it would tear me down to being 2 inches tall before I come on air, literally like 20 minutes before I come on air. And I come on air and I just put on like a good deal of energy, be able to perform in my voice. My face certainly wouldn't have shown it. I was not happy at all. And it'd be totally fine. Like, no one would really be able to know. And that's one thing that I don't really like about the whole show your face thing, because then it makes it a whole bunch of, it adds a whole other layer of stuff that makes it a lot more difficult, because then it starts becoming more personality focused instead of content focused. And, you know, there's a whole deal of things that would go on with that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really like that too much. So that's generally one of my aversions to it, at least on that. But, you know, if you want to see our face, because we have done a face reveal before back at 100,000, which was like 3 years ago now, we actually do have some YouTube shorts that show us, like, in the flesh in front of the cameras. And we also have a very few number of live streams that actually show us on stream as well. So if you ever want to go check those out, you can. That's something to go take a gander at if you want to see what we look like. Because we still look exactly the same to this day. We haven't changed much. It's not like we're, you know, like lizard people or shapeshifters or anything. So, you know, what you see is what you get. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I see a lot of people saying, yeah, keep the channel content based. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, and also another thing is that, like, just on a personal perspective, I don't really like putting my face out there either. Like, I'm just speaking for all the reasons why I don't like doing that ever. I don't like doing that because it makes it less so about what we're covering, and it makes it more so about who we are, like how we look, how we talk, our facial expressions. That starts to become a much larger part of the factor than what we're actually covering. And our channel, it's got a good record to show that it has been growing rapidly over the years, at least compared to others in the category. And I generally say that's because we focus far more on our content than trying to market ourselves as personalities or anything else. You know, yeah, we talk and we joke and we do voices from time to time, you know, and a lot of people like to hear our voices and stuff, that, you know, and that's great. But at the same time, I don't really want that to be what our channel markets as the focal forefront of the whole thing. I would like it to more so be about the actual content itself that we're covering the news every day. And I think that removing our faces from the equation really makes that more so central to the focus and more locked in on that, than trying to pretend like, you know, we're trying to build ourselves up to be experts that travel around and pretend like we're important people with face recognition value, when we're really not. Because, you know, I'm perfectly fine with people not recognizing me off air, and just recognizing me off of the voice instead of my personal face or appearance. But with that, I hope that addresses all of that the best we can. And we will see about what we're going to be doing here in the future. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
Honestly, if anybody ever recognizes me off air, then I know almost for a fact they've done some looking, because I'm like, if you know what I look like that well, then you've done some research into me apparently, because I'm like, we hardly ever show our faces. Now somebody might be able to recognize me by my voice, because my voice is kind of unique, and also just to say, like, straight up honest, my voice does not match my appearance. Like, my voice sounds like I'm 40 and I look like I'm still in high school. So immediately when people hear my voice, they're like taken aback. It's like a shock. To a lot of people, they're like, wait a minute, is that voice coming out of that guy? Like, that doesn't even like add up. It's like it catches people off guard so much. And it's weird, because people told me for a long time, they said, also they told us to Andrew too, they said, you guys would be great on radio because you have like radio voices. And I was like, you know, whatever. And oddly enough, we ended up being essentially like a YouTube radio show, which is weird, because I didn't think I was going to actually end up doing something like that. So it's kind of weird how it turned out that way. It was just meant to be. I guess it was just fate, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I would suppose so. It's really funny because, like, also, by the way, there's something else that's really funny. We never expected to do this as a job or even run a business that revolves around news. I never thought that would ever be in my life at all. And everyone always said, oh yeah, you've got like a voice for like a radio or a TV show or something. And you, like, some people would say, it wasn't an often thing to be said. Most people would take a dig at us, honestly, rather than say anything as a compliment. But some people would be like, yeah, you know, like you've got a great personality. I think you do really well on like TV or something. You might end up being a reality TV host. And I was like, hey, that's crazy. Like, thanks for the compliment. And then we ended up doing this as a job. We've been doing it for years now. And it's just a really weird thing to think about that. You know, it's like, it's just so bizarre, Matthew, because I don't think anyone else that we know of from when we were growing up ever went and did this. A lot of them said that they would, and then they didn't. And then I said that I was never going to do this, and then we ended up being the ones who were doing it. It's just weird how that kind of turned out. But still, with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
All right. So to close out the chapter on this topic right here, I did run a poll on it to see what everybody was thinking. So it looks like, and once again, the question is, what do you want for the 500,000 subscriber milestone? Because we'll probably be coming on up on that probably in a month or maybe a month and a half or so at the current rate. Maybe even sooner than that, depending on the events. But it looks like 37% said a video special about the channel, like maybe a history behind it, or maybe some type of like insight to maybe us or the channel or something of that nature, maybe like a documentary style thing. And 21% said a video podcast style stream, and 18% said a Discord call with the enforcers. Now, the one thing here that I do find interesting is the video podcast style stream thing. And of course, that would be more of like a talking deal, like talking about just things about the channel, I guess you could say. Not necessarily a news stream, perhaps, but just like a video podcast style thing, like interview style. But the only problem with that is, though, we wouldn't have an interviewer. So that would probably be a little problematic. We'd just be talking to ourselves at that point, which could get a little bit manic. So maybe a Discord call would be better, I think, perhaps. Or we could talk to each other or talk to ourselves. That's another option as well. But Enforcer, what do you think?
Man, you know, I could always sit across from you and go, "You like Hot Fudge Sundays?" And then you go, "Give me that." Like, we could recreate the old country buffet training video. That would be a tough one to pull off, a video podcast style stream. A video special about the channel. You know, one thing that would actually be kind of neat is if we did one of those draw my life things. You know what I'm talking about, Matthew? Back in the day, it was kind of a big thing. The Draw My Life series where people would talk about their life.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know, we could do something like that. That might be a neat idea. Let's see, a Discord call with the enforcers, that's actually easily done. That's easily said and done. We just, schedule a call, hop on the call, and then get to chit-chat with everyone. That would be pretty easy to do. Unsure and undecided, that's an interesting option. I'm personally in that camp as well myself right now. That's why we ran this. But I would have to say, a video special about the channel, that could be something that we could do. We could actually tell you all a little bit of our lives growing up, doing this, all that stuff. Well, yeah, there wasn't really.
I don't know about too much, because our channel is a little bit more heavy focused on OPSEC, because we obviously talk nasty about very dangerous people in the world, and some people are like, there's no way like people would want to take out two young YouTubers talking about the war. Well, you'd be surprised because we've gotten death threats in the past and things like that. We've been harassed by communities. We've also clearly gotten the attention of international leaders, because we are followed by several of them on YouTube here and also on Twitter. So we're catching the attention of people that have the ability to maybe take objection to what we're saying. And considering that we're talking about people like Putin and also his underlings, that could be a bit of a problem. Like me personally, I wouldn't be too wild about giving out too much information. I would love to show, like, for example, where we grew up, our hometown and things like that, because I'm sure people would find that interesting. But at the same time, though, I don't want to give away so much info that it becomes easy to like start piecing together pieces of the puzzle for us, which it could get a little concerning.
While we could always read off Obama's autobiography, gotta have them ribs, and we could always read that off and it stay. Because I'm not gonna lie, man, that clip is gold. That's hilarious, honestly. But
Also, by the way, people like, I knew this was coming too. People were like, "Wait a minute, who is following you?" We're followed by, like, for example, Han Lopovsky, who's I believe, what is he? What's his position again?
He's the foreign minister of the Czech Republic.
Yeah, foreign minister of the Czech Republic. We're mentioned in the book by David Petraeus. He's got connections to the intelligence agencies here in the United States. We're catching the attention of people. Also, we're watched by the cousin of the vice president currently, because he's been on our Twitter, and I assume he's seen the channel as well. So it's not a thing that we're just saying just to, like, toot or whistle or say something. And I'm not saying it for recognition's sake at all. I'm just saying it for like OPSEC concerns. If we're catching those people's attention, we're catching some bad people's attention too, which probably are not too wild about what we're saying. So, it's a little bit concerning at times, but at the same time, though, I'm not like worried about it on a daily basis. But giving away too much information, though, that would concern me a bit.
And generally, also, like, this is something that's interesting, is that technically everyone in the category on YouTube specifically that's ever covered the Ukraine war that's of significant size and has made it a big thing for themselves, like we have here on this channel. The Russians actually technically have a hit list of a sort that was put out by their foreign ministry that said that if they were able to ever get their hands or get near to anyone who has a significant voice in support of Ukraine in the West, they're either going to try and arrest them or kill them. That was generally put out to everyone, and I think the only person that they've ever tried to follow through on that on was Sternenko, who has about 2 million subscribers here on YouTube. But that does show that they could possibly try and take some information and then use it against us, because we've been pretty vocal against the Russian government, against the Iranian government, the Chinese government, the North Korean government. These people don't like us. Like, if they've ever seen our stuff, they hate us because we do not hold bars, and we go straight for the throat or the jugular on a lot of these countries as far as criticizing them. So as far as putting out too much information, Matthew's right. We really couldn't, because who's to say that some of those people don't take some of that information and then try and deduce some other things, or, do something else. You just never know. Because the one thing I'm not scared of, folks, as long as we're in the United States, is a whole bunch of, like SWAT team style guys from Russia busting through our windows. That's the least of my worries. My worries lie elsewhere in what could come through other sources or try and get us some other way. So, that's something that
the danger is when you get off your home turf. If you go, like, for example, overseas travel, if they want to get you, overseas travel is a vulnerable spot to be in. Also, if you, for example, leave your like normal like area where you live and you go traveling elsewhere, that's also another vulnerable point as well. So honestly, I would say the risk of getting caught getting caught lacking in the United States by like some foreign intelligence agency is probably not very high. But for example, like in the UK, your odds go up dramatically. Like there's a very heavy Russian presence in the UK, which is unfortunate because I happened to like going to the UK with a couple of times we went. But there's a heavy Russian presence there, and they've actually carried out many assassinations using chemical agents on former Russian intelligence officers that were living in the UK. So that's a little bit concerning. Now, I don't know if they would go as far as to make it that public on two YouTubers, but we said some things about Lavrov's mother and stuff like that. I'm not sure if maybe they've taken a personal liking to us, perhaps, and they really don't like that as much to make it that public.
And also, I saw someone say, "Are you afraid of Mossad?" No, because we don't say anything against the Israelis. And also, it's a free country. So, if the Israelis were wanting to come after us as a supposed ally, that'd be a tough sale. So, no, I'm not scared of the Mossad. I'm not scared of any of the Western intelligence organizations because, the former director of the CIA put us in a history book that he wrote. So, that generally tell me we have to be in the good graces of the intelligence forces of the West. We're in support of the West, so it'd be really hard to be in their bad graces. But as far as other groups, those can get a little bit concerning. And whether our government will be there to help us out or not, that's kind of the question. They can't be there all the time for everything. And also someone said, "Are you aware that you have YouTube shorts that show your face?" Oh, yeah, we're fine with that. But as far as like putting out loads and loads and loads, because anyone could find a picture of her face, by the way, so it doesn't matter if we hide that or not. Someone could find it if they wanted to. But the thing that we don't really want to put out is a whole bunch of details about our personal lives, like just a great amount of details, because that could end up running a lot of operational security issues, because then they find out a lot about your personal workings and lifestyle that they could possibly try and use against you in the future, or try and social engineer something where you put yourself into a trap. Those sorts of things can happen. So, you want to make sure to be careful, be safe, and that's what we try to do. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well. And someone, by the way, someone's about to say, "Oh, these people are so paranoid running this show." And to them, they don't even know what we've been through running the show. We have every single reason to be paranoid. We've had people find out where we went to law school and try and have us swatted and shot at the law school. We've had people show up at Enforcer HQ 1.0 saying that they were pizza delivery men and they weren't, and they were trying to get into the house for some reason. There's been a whole bunch of stuff that's happened. And we have great cause, great concern to be to be concerned with good reason, because there are a lot of crazy people out there. There's a lot of just random crazy people out there, and then there's also a huge amount of pretty questionable governments out there that might also want to do stuff like that as well. I mean, it's something we got a good reason to be concerned about. But with that, I hope that does address it the best we can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Rye Guy SR, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you
Hey!
very much, Rye Guy, for that support. And they said, Enforcer Train Talk, and my dad was the first to deploy train car tracking system here in the Northeast as private contractor, worked for Boston and Maine, Guilford, Pan Am, CSX, Norfolk Southern, ATM at the moment. Our high car detector protects the Hoosick Tunnel.
Oh, that's really cool, Rye Guy SR. That's really neat. Also, it's interesting to hear. I think your dad worked for a lot. Actually, he worked for almost every single predecessor railroad of the CSX. I think the Boston and Maine, Guilford. I think Guilford and Pan Am actually were the same system. It's just that they eventually changed the name from Guilford to Pan Am. But there was actually, I got to say, their paint job was actually pretty cool. A railroad called Pan Am Railways for a little bit, and you're probably like, wow. The Pan Am Airways ran a railroad? No, they didn't. Like, Pan Am went bankrupt, as many of y'all will know, in the 90s. And the guy who I think ran the Guilford Railway Systems was like, oh, I like the Pan Am logo and the name. So he bought it. Like, he just bought the rights to the name and the logo, and then he just started throwing it onto his railroad. So that's the only reason the Pan Am Railroad exists. Has no relation to the Pan Am Airways at all, or airlines. But that's pretty cool to hear that he worked for him. I'm guessing that he must have been way up there in the New England area because, let's see, Boston and Maine, way up there, of course, near the area of Maine. Guilford and Pan Am, I think, we're in the same area up here, as you can see. Let's see. And then CSX and Norfolk Southern, which also both operate up there. But really cool to hear. That is really neat stuff to hear. I got to thank you for the support and sharing that little tidbit in the story with me, because I always love to hear stuff about the American railroads. They're just really cool, and I have a lot of respect for them. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Rye Guy SR, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to hear incredibly cool stories of folks like that. That's just incredibly neat to me. I always find that stuff cool. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. So, also, by the way, let's see here. I see someone saying you two should continue making those firearm shorts when you have time. The firearm shorts were pretty cool. The only problem with that, though, is we have to go out to the range to film it. I know that sounds lazy, but there's a lot of setup work involved with trying to film that. We could film it with our phone, but that's pretty low effort. And we want to do it a little bit better than that. So we could maybe, but it's a lot of effort to actually go to the range, find the range, set up all the recording equipment, then edit the video. That's a lot of work just for some YouTube shorts. But we possibly might in the future. It's a possibility. But moving on to our next one here. This one is going to go to Joshua A, who puts an 810. He said, "Please take my money. You guys are amazing, and thank you for the hard work."
I thank you for the support, Joshua, and we will take it. I thank you massively for that support, because folks like you make this thing possible and help us to keep the great work that we're going rolling every day. And so a big thanks to you once again, Joshua. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Jenna, as well, for that support. And they put in the emoji of a steak or mutton.
Mutton chops. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Jenna, last name Tolls, and helping this channel to keep it running and throwing in some interesting emojis. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Hands on Fire. And thank you very much, Hands on Fire, as well, for that support and throwing that in and helping to keep the channel running. We also have a 10 from Ernesto Monteroso, who said, "Isn't THAAD an S400 and Patriots are an S300? And I guess I was wrong all the time."
I thank you for support. It's kind of similar in a way. I would actually say the Patriot is the S400, and the THAAD has no comparable peers, at least at the moment in the world. That's how I generally look at it. But I do thank you for the support, and I hope that gives my opinion on the defense systems somewhat well. But still, I got to thank you for helping this channel to keep on rolling. And also, Lord Cog just asked in the live chat before we get the next one, where did the channel avatar come from? That channel avatar is actually me. That is actually me in that channel avatar picture. I was dressed up in a World War I era doughboy uniform and took that picture, and we put some really neat filters on it, and it ended up making it look super cool. So we were like, you know what? That's going to be the picture. That's going to be it. So that's actually where the profile picture of the channel came from. I think it's a really cool looking one. And originally, apparently, the profile picture was that of the NCR courier from Fallout New Vegas. So I tried to make something that looked comparable to it. So that was the closest thing to comparable that I could get. That looked better. Because the first one was bad. Like, let me go see. NCR courier profile picture. Maybe I can actually go find the exact one that I had for the channel, at least originally. Let's see here. Anything that looks black and white, because it was black and white back then. Nah, they don't have any. But apparently everyone told me later. I didn't know this at the time, but apparently it was this guy from Fallout New Vegas. Never played Fallout New Vegas, and that was what my profile picture was. I just remember that I saw it on Steam. I thought it looked cool, and so I just made it my profile picture. Didn't even know that Fallout New Vegas was where that was from, but I wanted to change it to make it look a little bit more professional, so we went with that. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to West Rosie, who puts in a 10. And they said, don't the Iranians have camera feeds from their facilities that they can look at and look through to determine if there's still something down there in that facility, the nukes?
They probably do, but the issue is that all of those lines were most likely severed or knocked out in the explosions, so the cameras might not work, and they'd still have to go down there to do a thorough damage assessment. And so with that, a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Alex Burleton, who puts in a 5. He said, maybe being back Moscow Mike for the 500,000 mark. Just joking, and keep up the good work, and take one from the chat.
Thank you for the support. I think that would never happen at this point. I think that wouldn't happen after the first time. Woo, man, that was a rough one. Because what was interesting, folks, is that we were told by Moscow Mike that he was going to say one thing on air, and then he came on and said a totally different thing on air. And so that didn't go well at all. We were kind of a little bamboozled in that one. So yeah, I don't think they'll be coming on again. Because I like it when we try and pre-plan something and folks go along with the plan they laid out instead of just kind of telling us something to get onto the air and then doing something totally different. That's something that I'm still not too happy about to this day, to be entirely honest. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to, let's see here. This one goes to CIA Accounts Payable, Black Ops Accounting. And thank you very much, CIA Accounts Payable, for that support. We do appreciate that. They said, I appreciate your operational assistance. Look for a small token of our appreciation and esteem. Oh, and thank you very much for that. We do appreciate that, of course. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you, CIA Accounts Payable, for throwing us another gift of esteem and appreciation. We're massively supportive and thankful for that. And we, of course, have a great deal of respect for our armed forces and intelligence services that help to keep our country safe. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a $10 super chat from Rye Guy SR. And they said, keep up the awesome coverage, guys. And do you think that the Russians would start at Suwalki Gap or in Estonia if they were to invade the Baltics? And pros to each. And LLT LSA, Slava Ukraine.
And I thank you for the support. I actually say they'd probably start in multiple locations. One, they would definitely move for the Suwalki Gap. Two, there would definitely also be an additional offensive straight to Vilnius, which is the capital of Lithuania. Three, there would mostly be a Russian offensive heading down the M9 motorway towards Resigne, which is the largest town within eastern Latvia. And then they would also begin an offensive near to the area of Narva. I have a feeling that that probably would be how all of it would end up working out. It wouldn't just be a singular offensive. It will be a multi-front offensive, highly difficult and really tough to pull off, but they'll have to be able to do that to try and have any success at the beginning, because if they allow NATO to focalize all of its firepower on one specific front, they will guarantee fail quick. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for the support, Rye Guy SR, and helping this channel to keep on running. As it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. And so with that, long live the Leaf Spring Army, and the Leaf Spring Army will never die. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Brian Shade, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Brian, as well, for that support. He said, new warnings in Israel, and red alert heard on my phone, and any news?
We do have news. The missiles were fired from the Houthis. It appears that it wasn't an incredibly large number. It was quite small. May have even been shot down already. I don't know if we had the news on that or not, but that's about all the details that we have at the moment. And so I hope that addresses that well. A big thanks to you once again for helping this channel to keep running and supporting it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in the 10. And Andrew said, I like how the enforcers are cognizant of all the scams and maintain the integrity of their channel. And you guys have managed to avoid all the YouTube tropes. And otherwise, I wouldn't have been an LSA member.
Hey, I gotta thank you for appreciating that. We're happy to know that people actually do appreciate that. Thank God people notice, because there are so many people out there who do sketch things and nobody notices it a lot. In fact, some people try and deride us because we're not on the trending scam for the large part. And I'm glad to know that we haven't done any of that. We've kept our channel the same way for years. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud that we make everything as transparent as it possibly can. But, you know, we pretty much use the YouTube system for everything. And I'm happy to know that we have been keeping this channel running for years, and people still have a great deal of trust and faith in the channel to do what's right instead of doing whatever grabs the buck the quickest. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Bradley Moore, who puts in an 8. And he said, there is a red alert in Israel.
And I thank you for the support, and we did hear about that, and I thank everyone for sharing that with us, so that way we could get some breaking news developments on that at the moment. So a big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And we have a 6 from Jason Curling. And thank you, Jason, also. He said, well, you get a third person on the channel as it is getting larger. And honestly, Jason, I'll be honest with you, it looks like, generally speaking, as busy as we were during that little time here about covering Iran and Israel, that appears to be as busy as the chat can possibly get. If it got any busier than that, I'm not even sure if a third person could really even help at that point, because it was moving so fast that I don't even think a human could read it. So I think what our solution might end up becoming is that we simply fine-tune Nightbot to be a little bit more aggressive with its moderation on the nights where we're super busy. So that way I can take a back seat to moderating and start doing more intel gathering. So that way we don't have to bring on a third person. Because I'll be honest with you, sometimes bringing on an extra person is more management work than it's worth. At least in my experience, I would say it is. Because then you have to keep the person, trained basically how you want them to be. You have to start doing all these things to keep them up to date. And it's a lot of effort just to manage the third person. So honestly, I think we'll probably keep it as it is. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I don't really know if a third person would help either. I'll be entirely honest with y'all. I think on nights like that, either we're going to have to make the Nightbot more resilient, like Matthew's saying, or it might have to just become the free city of Danzig in a sort, and anything goes. Because it was so insane. Let me show y'all this really quickly. This was the largest stream that ever ran in channel history right here. We had 140,000 live viewers and an average viewership over the whole stream of 75,000 people. And this is what the chat looked like. And on average, it was getting to about 1,000 chats a minute. So that means that there's over 10 chats coming in per second. Even having a third person on, they wouldn't even be able to physically read most of the chats. It was insane. It was just nuts. So I honestly think that on nights like this, if we ever had a night this crazy again, we probably would just have to end up letting it largely be unmoderated, kind of like we were on those other nights, because controlling a crowd that size, it would require probably about 100 moderators, and we can't deputize moderators that fast because moderators have to go through a pretty strong vetting process. And I can generally say this before anyone says I can be a mod, and I don't mean to say this to anyone who's saying that, but most of the people who always went out of their way to volunteer as a mod in the past usually ended up not being mods that were generally controllable. They were generally looking to try and gain some sort of semblance of power and then wield it against us. So that's generally why we don't have any moderators, is because of our prior experiences with 2 waves of moderators that we had, and both waves of moderators ended up going poorly. So that's kind of why
we would have to. I think at that point we would have to have some help, like interviewing people at that point, like somebody, like honestly, like we need to like require like a video call or something, and like bring on like a freaking body language expert or something to like tell us, is this person a good pick for a mod or not? Because honestly, like y'all wouldn't believe it or not, if you get a bad mod on your channel, they can actually start wrecking your channel, because the ones that the Enforcer got originally, who appeared to be decent, they ended up turning out to be extremely bad. And before 1 or 2 of them left, I can't remember which batch it was, the first or the second batch, it was some of them. They ended up banning some of our longtime channel legends just to try to get even with us. And then we had to later find that out and go back and try to unban those people that got banned out of the chat secretly by some of these people that got disgruntled. So it can be detrimental actually for people that get disgruntled with the channel. It's like a disgruntled employee that wants to come back and get revenge, but they have like the ability to actually start damaging the business, which is not good.
Yeah. Also, like, one thing I generally have to say is that, like, as far as criteria, I would know this might sound a little draconian, but I know that this is the way it'd have to go. If we brought on mods, we would have to pretty much have some sort of a contract signed with them with some sort of consideration involved. And we would also have to make sure to have a decent amount of their personal data, so, you know, home address, stuff like that, their name and everything, so that way if they did something stupid, like tried to damage the business, or they did something ridiculous like try and defame us or slander or libel our name, we could then conduct legal action afterwards. Because pretty much all of the mods that we ever had in the past, this is generally how it would go. Oh, I love the channel so much. I would love to be a mod. Make me a mod. I want to be a mod. I love to be a mod. I love this channel. Make him a mod. And then within days, they start making demands of me. I don't like this. You changed this, you bastard. And I'd be like, no, this is my show. What the hell are you talking about? And then some people, like, this was one thing that I found ridiculous. The first wave of moderators that I had said that they wanted to do it as volunteers because they just liked the show and they'd like to help out. Within a week, they were starting a concerted push to get paid to be moderators. And I was like, how the hell would I even pay y'all? Like, I was like, I don't even, like, y'all don't even clock hours. You'll just do whatever, whenever you want. It's like, how in the world is that actually something that could be payable? And on top of that, you wanted to volunteer. So if you wanted to get paid, you should have told me up front that you were wanting to get paid. And then I would have said no, because no moderator ever gets paid. Like, I've been a moderator some places before. You never get paid to do that. I was like, that's just ridiculous. And so then because of that, and because they wanted to tell me how to run my business at the time, Matthew wasn't even on yet, up until like the last week and a half before the schism happened, as we call it, the Great Schism. They then wanted to start telling me how to run the show, actually, and pretty much tell me what I had to do. And so at that point, I was like, I do not like these people at all, because none of them actually came onto this channel with any good intent of actually helping us out. They came onto the channel with the concept of hijacking the thing and trying to run it with me as their puppet. And I was like, that ain't going to work. So they all went, and then the second group came in after them, not long after them, as a matter of fact, and then they did almost the same thing. Almost the same thing verbatim. And so then at that point, I was like, okay, we're not going to go for third time's the charm. We're just going to go with 2 times was enough. And then these people go around, we don't know who they are, so they're just free to say crazy stuff, like just absolutely slanderous stuff to try and ruin our reputation that has absolutely no merit or base to it whatsoever, and just try and ruin our name for doing what we've been doing for years. And it's just that kind of stuff. I was like, no. I was like, you know, we are certainly not having moderators. Like, just the honest truth is, we are not having moderators ever, unless if bringing these moderators on, they either sign some sort of a contract, or we have enough information about them that we can take legal action against them if they want to decide to start lying about the channel and destroy or try and ruin the channel's reputation baselessly because they're disgruntled with something because they wanted to have a power trip. That's kind of honestly the honest truth.
It's also hard to, like, honestly, there's nothing obviously difficult to moderating at all. It's just a matter of like reading the chat, make sure nobody's getting out of control, like, you know, being disrespectful to people or attacking us, like trying to slander us, or even bots just trying to put in pro-Russian propaganda or something like that. It's just a matter of good judgment. And honestly, like, you know, everybody tends to do it. I'll be honest with you, at times I've tended to do it and I've had to back off. If you don't have good judgment and you start just banning people just for the hell of it, like, for example, if someone just comes in and says something that somebody doesn't agree with, and it's just like, okay, just ban them. It's like, well, you know, that's subjective. And since we're the ones, you know, having to make the decision to ban people, we would like to be involved in that instead of just having some third party person deciding that on their own accord. It kind of starts making it a little too, I guess you could say, loose with the banning at that point, honestly.
Yeah, and then another thing, like here's some huge issues I had with prior rounds of mods. I would say your political opinions do not belong here. When you're a moderator, you throw those out of the door and you just enforce the rules. No one can be political. And then they would end up being political. So we would have, like, say, a left-leaning or a right-leaning moderator, and then they would see someone say something that they politically agree with. And guess what? Out of the blue, those people don't have some rules put on them. The rules are bent to work around those people because those people agree with them politically. And then the people that didn't agree with them politically, then the rules are in, like, the whole book is thrown at them every single time they show up by a moderator. And then that's something that annoys me a lot because I don't really like anyone speaking anything domestically politically at all. And I personally don't really weigh in on that most of the time. I just, analyze stuff, say if it's good or not, and move on. But when moderators want to say that they're not being political, and then they are, that's something that drives me up a wall because it's like that's not reflective at all of Matthew or my views or our values or us trying to be welcoming to everyone. No matter what their political affiliation is, we do not care. We just care that they want to hear the news, and that's all. And then those people want to take that and then run with it, and then try and spin the rules to where it benefits either the right-leaning people or the left-leaning people, and then screw over the other people they don't agree with. And I'm like, that's just not what this show is about. And then there's also other people like you just wouldn't believe the stuff that happened on the second Discord server, folks, if I told y'all the in-depth details of it. Like, there were people in there that were doing stuff that just absolutely shocked me. No one even told me about it because I don't have time to moderate a Discord server. We were doing plenty of stuff every day. Even back then we were doing a lot of stuff. We were doing honestly more back then than we were now. So I couldn't even spend the time to moderate. And then someone would do something that was just wildly off the wall to me. Like, I'd be like, that is something honestly that the local authorities should be contacted about. And then because they're friends with the moderator, they wouldn't tell us about it, and then it would just keep going. And then they just try and, like, I was like, okay, this isn't like a private church or something where we slide that shit under the rug. Those people need to go. It doesn't matter if they're your friend or not. And then they try and let that stuff slide. And I was like, we cannot have that coming back as a liability issue for this channel because these people want to play friendships and stuff. Well, I was like, hell no. So that's also why we don't have directly related Discord server. But with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right. And also, let me get rid of this bot that just came in here real quick. There we go. So moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Wilderness LSA Latvia, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Wilderness, for that support. He said this format is great. And the only change the LSA ever wanted was bring Matt back. And I remember that time, by the way. He said, thank you for the great work.
And I got to thank you so much for the support. And I got to thank you for enjoying our great work. Wilderness LSA Latvia, the original LSA hoof trimmer. I think the only LSA hoof trimmer. I also like that you have the profile picture of the LSA mug. And I got to say, let's see. And yeah, I would say that was actually a change. Matthew left for a little while to work on law school, and then he decided that he hated law school, and he came back. And then I also decided that I hated law school, and I quit. And then we got into this thing full time. But I do thank you so much for the support, Wilderness LSA Latvia, and thank you for enjoying our great work and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would never be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. So our next one here is going to go to Banger CVR SN, who puts in the 10 and says, Legends, LSA.
And thank you so much for that kind praise, and thank you for the support and helping us to keep it rolling. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here is going to go to Wait What, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Wait What. They said, what about a duck race? People buy ducks for a small token prize. Like a duck. Like, are you talking about those like rubber duck things? Or are you talking about like a real duck?
You know, man, there's actually a duck that's been drawing my attention lately. I've got to find this one. Let's see here. It's that classic. Yeah, there it is. Dude, these things are really cute, actually.
Is that a mallard?
No, I don't even know what kind of duck that actually is, to be entirely honest. But these...
Oh, that duck with that tail, though. Look at that.
Well, which one?
That one right there.
This one? Bro, that one's kind of wild.
That's got a tail on it.
Let's see. There's these. I don't know what kind these are, but they're really cute. I like them. They look fluffy, too. But yeah, you know, like maybe we could do some like duck racing sort of a thing. We don't have any ducks. I don't really want to get into taking care of ducks. We don't really have room for livestock or pets or anything like that. But you know, maybe we could. But a big thanks
the one
to
that sells insurance, isn't it?
I think so. Maybe. And I also see a lot of people. Someone said happy duck. Someone said duck, duck, goose. That's a good one, Jeff Alley. That was actually a pretty good one. Someone said pecan duck. That's interesting. But this is the duck. I like these ducks. Some of them are also cool, like the mallards. The mallards are cool. This one though, this one's seen some shit.
Oh man.
Let's see. These are also cool. I believe these are wood ducks. These are really cool. I like the wood ducks. Let's see. And then you got this one, the giant duck in Ontario. Those are actually pretty neat. Then you got this ugly thing.
Ugh, that's like a dang buzzard.
Man, that thing is like a buzzard. Let's see. Any other interesting ducks? The mallard's really cool. I like the mallards. They're neat. Let's see. Dang, any other? Oh, look at these. Those. The mandarin duck.
That's a colorful duck.
Dude, this duck shows up, bro, and it pulls a Xi Jinping. It goes, "What's your puzzle? Bing jilling." Like, because it's a mandarin duck. But that's pretty interesting. By the way, mandarin is the actual technical term for Chinese. It's not Chinese, it's mandarin technically. But anyways, let's see. Any other? Honestly, that duck is cool. Dude, look at this thing. That thing is coated. Like, that thing is dripped out.
That's the Gucci duck.
Dude, they said the ducks are going to sink or swim, and buddy, this thing is floating.
That thing, honestly, man, it got out of the water. Like, even before it got in the water, it was dripping.
Dude, man, this thing is always wet, never dry. This thing is dripping permanently. Actually, that's very bad. Let's make an official retraction on that one. Bad setup, bad delivery right there. Terrible. Look at this one, though.
That duck's got an antenna.
Bro, this one's got the radio communication set, honestly.
It's a trunk duck.
Wait, it is?
No, like, I was making a joke about radios there. It was kind of a little nerdy.
Oh.
Trunked.
Nerd. I'm just kidding. Like, I'm just playing. Oh, look at this.
That right there, look at that. That thing is a soft duck.
Man, look at that. That is a soft duck. Look at these. The runner ducks.
Oh, that's the yeah, that's that one.
Isn't that duck that raised like Poe on Kung Fu Panda? Isn't that the one?
Maybe. Kind of looks like a dinosaur of sorts a little bit. That gray, like, where's the feathers at?
Whoa, where are the feathers at? I mean,
call him a duck, but where's his feathers?
I mean, call that thing a pecking duck because that thing certainly be peeking. Whoa, that thing can catch you in the shower. Look right over the shower curtain. I mean, whoa.
I mean, everything in nature's got its place, but this thing's not going to be on the Thanksgiving table.
I actually think these things are on Thanksgiving tables. Like, I think they eat these.
Sure.
Whoa, look at that one. That one's got a tumor for a forehead and two radio antennas on its back. Whoa.
Oh, man. Call him a candidate, but he might need Wegovy.
Bro, that's actually pretty funny. Dude, let's see here. What, dude? Honestly, man, these ducks are actually quite. Look at this one, the Harlequin duck.
Look at that.
There's actually some really cool varieties of ducks out here. I didn't know the ducks were this varied. Oh, look, the Peking duck.
Oh, that's the best form of duck right there. The ones that are cooked glazed.
Bro, we love a glazed duck. Dude, I've never had a Peking duck. Neither of us have actually had one, to be honest with y'all. We don't even know what they taste like. But let's see here. This guy is looking at this duck like he just discovered the ducks.
He's holding that duck like, tell me the secret of that insurance you was talking about earlier.
Yeah, man, he said, and how much is that APR? Like, or whatever, let's see. Oh, man. Dude, they have a million pictures of these mandarin ducks. Like, endless amounts of them. And the American black duck. I've actually seen a lot of these, actually.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those, a lot.
A lot. They're cool. This thing looks wrong. The Cayuga duck.
That poor thing looks like it's been through something. It looks like it might have gotten, like, maybe caught up in the meat grinder. Calls the duck Russian, but he's in a meat grinder.
he's the average vatnik out there on the front. He's also got the head shape for one. He's like almost a helmet shape to the top of the head. But
is that a ladder in the distance?
to suck at, and then still gets hit by the drone anyways. Oh man. But anyways, the ducks are neat. The ducks are pretty cool. Anyways,
What is that thing?
oh my god.
Yeah, boy, that looks like a Russian duck.
Wait, dude, let me actually speak the proper Russian way. Yeah, but like that's what they would say in response to that. Well, to your mind, they'd say something like, "Dude, that is bad. That's actually nightmare fuel right there." Dude, what is up with the lips? Why has he got lips like that?
I don't even know.
Also, why does his eyes look like that, dude? This thing looks like it's got the same bow ties Kim Kardashian got, and it also got PTSD. Where did this thing go? Like, where did it end up?
This thing looks straight into the reactor.
Dude, this is what the bears looked like around Chernobyl when they saw the sky was glowing blue that night. They looked like that up at the reactor and went, oh shit,
Oh,
blue.
bliat. The topsoil. It's contaminated, bliat. Oh dear.
Bro, when you start eating your normal fish out of the Pripyat River and they taste like static, that's what the bears ended up looking like. They're like, oh, blue.
Why do I taste metal? And I saw graphite on the ground.
Man, eating fish out of the Pripyat River as a bear after Chernobyl was like getting your first taste of that damn drink. I can't remember the name of it. LaCroix. It's like that. It's like that's what that tasted like probably to these bears. And honestly, I pity the fool because they were not eating well that day. Anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Freefall Tyler, who puts in a 10. And he said, thank you for all the up-to-date info and education. And I've made some beautiful entries on winning day trades because of the breaking news updates that you provide.
And I thank you for the support and the kind words, Freefall Tyler. And really interesting to hear that you're making trades based on our news and actually doing quite well. Maybe I need to get into that business, but we're not financial experts here. I just want to make that clear. A legal disclaimer for everyone. We're not financial experts, but apparently, let's see here. Freefall Tyler is actually doing quite well with that, so good on you. And I thank you for the support and helping us to keep her rolling. And we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Robert Tilden, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Robert, as well, for that support, and we do appreciate that. We also have a 5 from Jeffrey Walker, who said, y'all have been grinding, and we thank you. And reliability, trustworthiness is unmatched in LLT-LSA, and the king is coming.
Hey, and I thank you for the support. I thank you for enjoying this channel and giving us some really kind words. And even the king of news is coming. We're the kings of news, I tell you. And hopefully we'll be able to make sure to get on up there to the top one of these days. We're getting close to 500,000, which is getting close to massive exposure. I'd actually say that the Iran-Israel war was a massive exposure to lots of people about the kind of coverage we do and how good it is. Because generally, while a lot of people grew slightly during that whole coverage, we grew massively as a channel. I only saw one other channel grow at our speed, and they are known for that. They've been around for years. So with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Joshua A., who puts in a 5. And he said, I heard this on another channel. Do y'all think Putin could be restrained by the government if demoralizing attacks continue and possibly losing support? And I would say absolutely not, Joshua. Putin will never be restrained by the government unless he's being actively deposed from his position, because he has total control over the government. He operates it like a gang, and nobody's going to go up against the gang leader unless it's a deposing of Putin. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to completely agree with Matthew on that. I don't think there's a way that the government could just politely restrain Putin and be like, excuse me, dictator. Yeah, we'd like to run the government for a little. No, everyone else is a puppet there for now. So if they want to stop being puppets, they have to overthrow them entirely. There won't be any like mild restraint of him at any point that he would also respect either. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a 5. And Brian said, what's with the nuclear capable title? A hot air balloon is nuclear capable. We just need the crew to get out of range or use a drone.
I mean, that's kind of true, actually. But the thing with technically nuclear-capable aircraft is that they have to be tested and rated to carry a nuclear weapon. And the F-35A, and really I think all F-35 variants, have been tested and rated to be able to carry a B-61 gravity bomb, which is a tactical nuclear bomb. So all F-35s are technically rated by the United States as nuclear-capable. And so that's actually what makes them nuclear-capable. It's true, you could put a nuclear weapon on just about anything and drop it on something, but the thing thing is that the F-35 is rated nuclear capable while a hot air balloon isn't. So for diplomatic reasons, it makes it a little bit different. But I see exactly what you're saying, and that's really the truth of it. But the diplomatic world looks at it in a different way. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jamali Hamilton, who puts in a 5 and said, Ukraine's been using their Peklo cruise missiles more often. And what type of force multiplier do you believe these new missiles are actually bringing?
I believe that they're bringing a significant force multiplier because it's allowing for longer range strikes that are much more effective to happen at a faster rate. So I'd actually say that the force multiplier side of things, it certainly is increasing the ability of damage that the Ukrainians are able to get in a short-term period on Russian strategic targets, and it's certainly starting to show at this point in the conflict as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here, excuse me, goes to Ken, who puts in a 5. He said, do you think we can make a deal with Turkey that they give us a S-400 system on the low, and that would be a gold mine of intel?
Well, we could. Like, we could possibly do something like that. But the Turks will be pissing off the Russians for show. And I don't know if they want that kind of heat from the Russians, because the Russians would absolutely go off on them. Like, whether they could actually do something to Turkey or not is one thing, but it certainly would rattle the Turkish government to have to deal with something like that. So they probably wouldn't, but you know what they might? You know what they might? They might allow some U.S. Advisors into the country, specifically for the purpose of taking a gander at the S-400 and maybe taking one apart quietly inside of Turkey somewhere. They could do that. And so with that, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Ravencross, who said, do you think Russia will attack the Baltics to force China to have to save them, and Russia won't accept a loss, and ceasefire, win, or escalation is all we can really expect?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I think that there could be an invasion of the Baltics soon. But as far as the Russians doing that to try and get the Chinese involved, I'd highly doubt it. I don't think the Chinese would actually get involved on Russia's aid or to Russia's aid openly. It would be largely backdoors, kind of quiet material supports everything that wouldn't even be published too much. But an invasion of the Baltics is highly likely. It seems as though everyone's saying that, including the president of the U.S., and there has to be some credence to it for everyone to be saying it. So a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Leonidas, and he said he still looks even at this point with no desire for the war to end in Ukraine.
And I'd say, let's see. He still looks even at this point. I would say that Putin actually looks a little odd. I'd have to say he doesn't look even. He looks a little odd.
Crooked.
Yeah, it looks a little crooked even. I don't know about even. I mean, even is suggesting fairness, or at least a pair apiece. I would say he's certainly not. He's at least missing a ball, so I'd say he's not a pair. He's not. Or an even, he's not. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to talk about this whole conflict. And I'd agree. I don't think the war in Ukraine is going to be ending anytime soon. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from DYLT Glare, and he said, I love the channel. Thank you for all the work you guys put into the channel, and you guys give way better information than the news, by the way.
Don't we give better information than the news, DYLT? I got to thank you for that. I appreciate you for that greatly. Those kind of kind words, they mean a great deal to us. We put in a lot of work and effort here. And hey, you don't get mentioned in General David Petraeus' history book about the new and transformative ways that war is being covered in the news these days without being good. You don't. You know, the numbers speak for themselves, as they say, and I got to thank you massively for those kind words, because we greatly appreciate to hear that a lot of folks are saying that we're on up there as far as the news coverage goes. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we're on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Trezzy, and Trezzy said, hey, Enforcer Matt, and one question, the U.S. versus rest of NATO, who's winning? And from a curious Norwegian, and keep with a good word. That's honestly actually a pretty good question right there. The United States versus the rest of NATO, if the U.S. was separated from it, that would be an interesting one. Honestly, I'm not really sure how that would turn out, but just taking a stab at it from my end, I would say honestly that, you know, I don't want to say the answer I'm really thinking, because it might piss off some people, but I'm just going to say it anyway at the risk of pissing people off. I think the United States would still whoop Europe's ass, even if it came down to it, because the United States just has a massive military budget, and even though the entirety of the rest of NATO would be somewhat comparable to the United States, we have the benefit of having a unified military, in addition to Europe having multiple different militaries have to be coordinated. So that would be an advantage for the United States. But now, hopefully, I'm not pissing anybody off with that one, because I know some people are about to get triggered. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that, first off, I want to say that the U.S. versus the rest of NATO is a really close match, because the rest of NATO makes up half of the firepower that the NATO alliance has. So it's a peer-on-peer fight as far as it would go on the land. But the thing is that a fight between the U.S. and the rest of NATO would be fought in the Atlantic. It wouldn't be fought on land. So as far as that, then we're measuring who has the better naval assets, who has the better ships. And America, at least in theory, has a larger number of better ships. So what the U.S. could do in that kind of a conflict, because we clearly would never be able to land in Europe, and we'd never be able to win in Europe, considering that it'd be the whole of Europe pretty much against us at that point. What we could do, though, is that we could just navally blockade the entirety of Europe, most likely annex Canada in the meantime, and then just attrit the Europeans out of the conflict and win that way. So it'd be a pretty long, drawn-out sort of a conflict, mostly fought in the seas around the Atlantic. But I think in the end, the U.S. could win, but it would definitely be a costly battle for both sides, because I've got a great deal of respect for the European militaries. There's always a deal that goes on here in the West, where Europeans act like they can stand on their own without America, and America can stand on its own without the Europeans, and the Europeans are leeches. But the reality is that the entire alliance exists because of each other. America would not have the massive sphere of influence it had without our allies in Europe, and the Europeans wouldn't be able to call on the unbelievable firepower of the United States that makes the Russians tremble in absolute fear. I mean, it's not even a shot in the dark to try and beat the Europeans. There's no chance, because America's involved. So I have a great respect for everyone in our alliance. But still, if we put up the two against each other, just because the U.S. has a larger navy that's a little bit more powerful than the European navies combined, and of course the U.S. Navy is focused on blue water operations, and some European navies are mostly focused on coastal operations, the Europeans would probably end up losing out to pretty much a naval blockade or a war of attrition. But it sure as hell would never get on land, because the Europeans would never be able to make it to America, and we'd never be able to make it to Europe and keep a supply chain consistent enough and big enough running to actually be able to sustain any kind of a ground operation in Europe. So it wouldn't be like a hands-down victory. It would be a bloody victory that's won largely through attrition, probably over the course of several years. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. But still, I hope that we give the utmost respect to our European allies. And I got to thank you so much for the support all the way from Norway, because while I am saying that, I've got a great respect for Europe. I'm not one of the people here in America who wants to make it sound like the Europeans are leeches. The Europeans, as a whole, as a continent of different cultures, different peoples, and different nations, it's an amazing kind of a place. I've got a great deal of respect for all of y'all over there, and y'all have got some beautiful countries, and of course, some of the richest history out there in the world, outside of East Asia, in the Middle East, for the large part, in my opinion. Incredible stuff over there. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that question well. And we're on to the next one.
And also, by the way, I want to give this disclaimer, by the way. I would never advocate for the invasion of Europe. That's just a hypothetical. I want to make that clear, because some people will clip that and then take it out of context and say, oh, one of the enforcers was saying that we would beat Europe's ass and he wants to invade Europe. Never in a million years. Europe should always be our ally, and by treaty, they are our ally. So unless we decide to back out of a treaty or like tear it up or something, then Europe is legally our ally, most of the Europe that's in NATO. So I would never want to invade Europe, just to make that clear. But jumping into our next one.
Before we move on, Pavel Levsky said, you Americans are European, bud. Yeah, I mean, like, this is a hypothetical, man. I'm not saying, like, we should invade Europe or anything. Don't get offended. Because, Matthew and my family, because we're both from the same family, it's like 90% British, and the rest of that is Scandinavian. So it's like 8% Swedish and 2% Norwegian or something like that. Our whole family is from Europe. It wouldn't make any, and also on top of that, it wouldn't make any sense at all to go to war with Europe. It just doesn't. For America or Europe to be at odds with the other, it makes no sense, because we have a lot more to stand to gain from each other's mutual cooperation than we do from strife and conflict and division. That's just the truth of it. And me personally, I would like to one day actually be able to travel over to Europe and take a gander around, go see France, Germany, Italy, Austria, Switzerland, Poland. I'd like to see it all eventually someday because it's just a cool place. You Europeans who are watching, y'all don't really understand how lucky y'all have it to be in the places y'all are at. Y'all have all kinds of neat stuff to see, to do, a whole bunch of history that's tacked into everything, really interesting cultures, great public transportation, a whole bunch of cool stuff. I mean, it's a really neat place. And so I don't want anyone to think over in Europe that we're trying to deride the Europeans. No, I greatly appreciate y'all. I think y'all are a really cool place in the world. Some of the richest history that can be found in the world can be found in Europe, or it be found elsewhere in places like China or the Koreas, the Kingdom of Joseon, or Japan, so other places like that. I mean, it's or the Middle East, although you really can't go to the Middle East because of all the issues that Iran keeps making down there. But those are the three main places I'd like to eventually go: is Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia, and take a little look around. Because
it really sucks. It really sucks that countries like China and Russia want to, be so hostile toward the West, because they would be cool countries to visit. Like if you could go to Russia and take a look, it'd be cool to see the one area in Moscow that looks nice, just to be able to see it. Also, it would be cool to go to China as well, but it's like, just based on their system of governance, with it being basically a criminal organization that's running the entire country, it's impossible to go there. Like, for example, for people like us, if you've ever said anything nasty about their regime, it's impossible. If you go there, you're going to be harassed or potentially locked up or even worse. So it's just quite crazy. Like, honestly, I wonder, I have a pretty strong idea what would happen, but I wonder if, like, for example, if I just jumped on a plane tomorrow, went to China, got off the plane and went through their customs, what would actually happen? Like, I wonder what would actually happen. Would they let me straight into the country, or would they stop me and harass me, or what? I have a strong idea what would happen, but I just wonder what it would be in reality.
And it's really a shame, honestly, that some of these places are war-torn, because there's so many neat things in the Middle East. Like, actually really neat stuff, like the Bedouin people. I don't know if y'all have ever looked into the culture of the Bedouins, but they're a very interesting kind of a group of people. They have very interesting foods. They have a very interesting lifestyle. They were largely molded by the desert that they lived in. So it's a very sort of a unique cultural group with a neat history of its own, and a whole bunch of stories that they passed down through the ages. And then you have the Roman occupation of the area and the Ottoman occupation of the area. Literally anyone and everyone that you could have thought of throughout most of history ended up in the Middle East at some point. So it's a really cool place for that reason. Of course, because most of the area is war-torn, Syria is highly unstable at the moment. Iraq is generally unstable. Iran is hostile to the United States. And southeastern Turkey, where a decent amount of that history would be, is currently having some issues with the Kurds in that region and the fight that's been going on for decades there. You really can't go to any of it. So the only place you can go to is Saudi Arabia, where you can go see the Bedouin people, which is pretty cool. Or you can go to Jordan, which has a neat amount of history in as well, a lot of Roman history in there. Or you could go to the UAE, which I'm not really a big fan of, because the truth is they really didn't have a lot of history until like the past 60 years, just about, when oil was discovered on their territory. Or you could go elsewhere. China's really cool, but the problem is that if we went to China, good God, they would get us quick, Matthew.
What do you think would really happen?
Here's what would happen, because I know the Chinese fairly well. We wouldn't be shot. Well, obviously, folks, we wouldn't be shot. Here's what would happen, though. We would show up, they would scan the passports, and immediately the police would show up, follow us. They would take us to some sort of a room, and they'd sit there and they'd grill you for hours. Like, they'd just grill you until you were breaking down, and then they'd film you apologizing. Because in China, it's not really about necessarily just, like shooting you or something. It's about shaming you. Because the Chinese people as a culture like to work through the letter of the law, or to at least work through the idea of your reputation. Although they will shoot you at times, but they will shame you, and then they'll get you on film apologizing about everything you said about China and you were wrong, and all that stuff. And then they're going to bring you to court, and then they're going to sentence you to prison time. They're not going to execute us, because executing us as foreigners would be bad. They're going to put us in prison for an incredibly long time, though, in China, for the crimes we committed against the state.
And then they're going to put a huge pile of boulders in front of you, and they're going to give you that pickaxe, and they're going to make you start splitting boulders and shit.
Oh yeah, Yeah, that would happen. So that's why we can't go to China. And it's a shame because the Chinese people have such an interesting history. You know, you have all these interesting groups, the Uyghurs out there in Xinjiang. You have the Tibetans in Tibet. You have the southern Chinese. You have the Han Chinese from the central coast. And then you have the Manchurians from Manchuria. And you can't go and see any of them because they're all controlled by a communist government. That would end up putting us in the slammer if we went over there. So really the only places we could go is Europe, Jordan, and Israel maybe, but that's still very questionable. Not really because the Israeli government's questionable. It's just that, you know, who knows what could happen in Israel or Jordan if we were there. South Korea, Japan, maybe Taiwan, Australia, New Zealand, and that's about it. That's really all the places we can go, except for Canada, by the way. We could go to Canada, and we would be fine there. So that's kind of the issue with us getting to travel. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. Also, Mandy, I believe we're going to have to, we're going to have to speed it up just a little bit.
All right, so our next one here goes to Catherine of Idaho, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Catherine, as well, for that $5 support. We also have a 5 from Andrew Honeycutt. He said, train stuff, check out the Incline Railroad in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I think it's a marvel of engineering, and the history behind it is fascinating.
And let's take a look really quickly. Chattanooga. Oh, here
in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Oh, look at that. That's really cool, actually. I've heard of these before. You know, a little fun fact, not about this funicular railway, but funicular railways in general, which are these types. The first funicular railway in Italy actually had a song made after it, and it's the most famous song that ever came out of Italy. It's literally like their stereotype song. It's that one that goes If you ever heard that song, that's actually about one of these funicular railways like this one right here. A little bit cool with that. Hopefully I did that well. But beyond that, really cool. I never even knew that they had one of these in Chattanooga. And the machinery looks original. That's actually really cool. Man, that'd be cool to go see, actually. But I do thank you very much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that well. And maybe one day I'll be able to go and see this little thing. Maybe ride it. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to, wait, what? Who puts in a 5 and says, no, like a number of a duck. And then drawn out numbers, LOL.
Interesting. I thank you for the support, Wait What, and sharing that with us. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Sergeant Soggy, Sanford Expeditionary Force, who puts in a 3. He said, coffee enforcers, coffee.
Yes, I like coffee. I love coffee. And so a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel keep running. We'll have a coffee on you. And a big thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who put in a 2, and he said, LSA, hit the like button. That's in order.
And hit that like button, folks. That is in order. We actually got up to 4,100 likes tonight almost. Now I got to thank you all for hitting the like, and I hope you all continue to hit the like. So big thanks to you all once again. Hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to none other than Be Back Later, who puts in a 2. They said, what country did Israel sell their air defense to?
Oh, man. I think they buried some of their Patriots, but some of them are actually going to end up going to Ukraine now because the U.S. is repossessing them because the Israelis are getting rid of them, so we're just taking them back, and then we're going to give them to Ukraine, at least from what I've heard recently. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the last Super Chat of the night. And
this one goes to Tyler Naiman, who put in a 2, and thank you, Tyler, as well, for that support.
And thank you very much for the support. And that's actually going to be moving us on into our live chat segment. Due to time constraints tonight, unfortunately, folks, we will only be able to get 3 live chat questions and the Morse code decoders of the stream. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Also, someone said... Also, by the way, like, I don't know, like, can anybody in the chat read, like, simplified Mandarin, by the way? Because I was curious, because I obviously don't know how to write. I don't have a keyboard that can do simplified Mandarin, so obviously I'm going to Google Translate to get it. But some people are picking up on what I'm writing really quick. Either y'all are very fast with throwing it in Google Translate, or either some of y'all know how to read Mandarin. So someone said, what square? I'll have to let you decide about what square I'm talking about in that last message. But jumping into our Morse code decoders of the night, this one goes to Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Nora Pritchett, and Arabelle Garbo. They said the Morse code for today reads, Russians are losing even more ground, which is shocking, and the offensive just started. LLT LSA.
And ding. And that is the sound of money. And y'all got that down on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I gotta congratulate y'all greatly for getting that correct again, because at least Spring Army Sentinel Corps continues to get that correct time and time again. A really impressive thing. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Cyprian, who said, was there any news about IDF jets having dogfights with Iran?
No, we never heard of that. I was having to rake my brain to think on that. No, we never heard of that. We heard that pretty much all Iranian aircraft got shot down on the ground while they were still on the tarmac. So we cannot confirm any sort of actual fights between Iranian and Israeli aircraft. And it never appears that happened from what we could tell. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Oh, Matthew, that famous square, Tiananmen Square in Beijing.
Oh dear. Yes, that famous square.
Here
yes,
it
that
is.
one.
Look, Tiananmen Square.
It's such a beautiful place, I tell ya.
Nothing happened here in 1984. Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
Nothing.
We all know that nothing ever happens in Tiananmen Square, but good jolly things. One time, man, I knew this guy. He actually told me a story. He was walking home from a grocery store. Well, my voice just cracked right there for no reason out of the blue, just normally talking. But he was walking home from a grocery store. He had some shopping bags with him. And when he went walking down the street, some tank almost ran him over. These damn people didn't even notice the crosswalk was there. Ridiculous, am I right? Ridiculous. They almost tried to run the guy over. You shouldn't walk down the street.
You shouldn't. How can it be the fault of the driver when you're walking down the middle of the street? I mean, who takes their groceries, walks down the middle of the street, and then expects not to get, confronted by a tank? I mean, it's just common sense. Don't walk in the street.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Unheard of. Absolutely non-communist.
It's egregious, preposterous. It's terrible.
What were you about turning to that Seinfeld attorney? It's egregious, preposterous, downright non-commendable. Man, I was like,
yes.
Man.
Who told you to put that on? Who told you to put that on?
Who told you to put that on? I didn't tell you to put that on. Man, but anyways, folks, enough of us kidding around here. We got to get on to that second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Knox Date, who said, in each of your guys' opinion, what is the time frame of Russia having a full war with NATO? Honestly, Knox, I would say it's really impossible to put a time frame on it. Some people say, oh, Russia will be ready in a couple of years. The truth is, that's just a educated guess. I think the moment that Russia decides to invade NATO is the moment they realize they're getting pushed back very hard in Ukraine. They might decide to expand the situation a little bit just out of desperation. But I know that doesn't sound like it would make sense, but the Russians always have this weird idea of escalating to de-escalate. And that would be the most extreme form of that. It doesn't make much sense, but it's in the realm of possibility. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it could happen anytime within the next 2 years. I can't say exactly when, because we would have to be like fortune tellers to do that. And if y'all know anything about Squid Game, that shaman of the sea. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but, don't listen to people who fortune tell. But beyond that, I'd have to generally say that, in my honest opinion, it could happen anytime within the next 2 years, but exactly when, I couldn't say, but within the next 2 years. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night.
All right. So our final question of the night. You didn't do the thing or nothing?
Oh, yeah, damn it. I forgot. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Christian. He said, in each of your opinions, do you think the Iranians actually move materials in the trucks? I don't know. I don't know. The official U.S. position, which is what we will have to go with, because this country's intelligence agencies are saying that, is we're going to have to say that most of it was destroyed in the strikes with the B-2 bombers. That is the official position of the United States government at this point. The Israelis, however, initially stated that the Iranians got it out. But that's what the Israelis were saying, and it seems like maybe the Israelis were a little bit confused because they seemed to back off that assessment afterwards. So, that's the facts. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I'd have to agree. The official government position is that the uranium was destroyed. So I'm just going to say the uranium was most likely destroyed. Although the IAEA, the Iranians, the Israelis, and a lot of other people said something different. We're going to go with the official government position here in the United States, that it was mostly destroyed. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best we can, at least at the moment. And it is time for us to round this thing out. Go to bed for the night, sleep well, and get ready for another day tomorrow. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. We've had 110,000 viewers here. And while we have been spoiled over the past few weeks with getting nearly 1 million views on some streams, we are greatly appreciative to have had all of y'all here tonight. We're pretty much back to our normal audience, at least in terms of size, and I got to thank you all so much once again for appreciating and enjoying our news coverage tonight, because we try our best to make sure that we cover the world news of all the major developments happening anywhere and everywhere, every day, every 24 hours. So massive thanks to you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us yet again on this day of news, and be sure to join us again tomorrow night for another night of streams and another day of a short war video if there is enough news to cover in the video. But with that, folks, big shout out to all 109,000 people that joined us tonight, and of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.